I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And we got a lot of Davos coverage tonight by region, by country, by personality, politics, religion. I mean, it seems to have everything.
Yep.
It's a complete world restructuring what's going on here. We're going to start with Trump because he just gave his speech today and it was pretty epic. But I do have to say, Witkoff, that's one of Trump's main negotiators when it came to the Ukraine-Putin deal and a lot of other business dealings. He gave the best speech at Davos by far. If you're a nationalist, you're going to absolutely love a lot of what the American politicians had to say. If you're a globalist, you might not like it so much, although Carney came out hard for the globalists. Mark Carney's the Prime Minister of Canada.
Yeah, in favor of the globalists, because it sounds like for them. Trump went for the globalists. But here in Mexico, we're having a cold front as well, as we know this going over to Texas, but we're freezing over here.
Yeah, it's been a big cold front down, and we broadcast from Mexico City. It's been cold for about a week.
Yes.
It's expected to really hit Texas in the next few days. If they get 3 inches of ice, like they're kind of predicting, they could be out of power for up to a month. I mean, the last time that happened in Texas, there was major death.
Yeah, so hopefully it doesn't happen, but stay safe out there, please.
And if you're not subscribed yet, please do so. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. And if you haven't watched our edited videos, we just started publishing again. And YouTube doesn't really know to promote them yet, I guess.
Yeah, they don't love us too much because of the things we talk about, but we did release today a video about Trump derangement syndrome, and especially now with everything going on at Davos, it is pretty pertinent as to what's happening and what's happening to all the crazy globalists that are losing their minds over it.
Okay, let's start with Trump, and I just put him as breaking news because he did just give a speech today, and it was kind of the centerpiece of what was going to happen at Davos. Everybody was waiting for that speech.
Yes, so let's see the breaking news.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
And yes, Trump first and foremost. So here from Chief Nerd, President Trump just nuked the Davos narrative on globalization, open borders, and climate change.
Yeah, and this was pretty much everybody coming out of the American administration echoed this meeting after meeting, whether they were on stage or giving individual interviews.
This afternoon, I want to discuss how we have achieved this economic miracle, how we intend to raise living standards for our citizens to levels never seen before, and perhaps how you too and the places where you come from can do much better by following what we're doing, because certain places in Europe are not even recognizable, frankly, anymore. They're not recognizable. And we can argue about it, but there's no argument. Friends come back from different places. I don't want to insult anybody and say I don't recognize it. And that's not in a positive way. That's in a very negative way. And I love Europe, and I want to see Europe go good, but it's not heading in the right direction. In recent decades, it became conventional wisdom in Washington and European capitals that the only way to grow a modern Western economy was through ever-increasing government spending, unchecked mass migration, and endless foreign imports. The consensus was that so-called dirty jobs and heavy industry should be sent elsewhere, that affordable energy should be replaced by the Green New Scam, and that countries could be propped up by importing new and entirely different populations from faraway lands. This was the path that sleepy Joe Biden administration and many other Western governments very foolishly followed, turning their backs on everything that makes nations rich and powerful and strong. And there's so much potential in so many nations. The result was record budget and trade deficits and a growing sovereign deficit driven by the largest wave of mass migration in human history. We've never seen anything like it. Quite frankly, many parts of our world are being destroyed before our very eyes, and the leaders don't even understand what's happening. And the ones that do understand aren't doing anything about it. Virtually all of the so-called experts predicted my plans to end this failed model would trigger a global recession and runaway inflation. But we have proven them wrong. It's actually just the opposite. In 1 year, our agenda has produced a transformation like America has not seen in over 100 years. Instead of closing down energy plants, we're opening them up. Instead of building ineffective, money-losing windmills, we're taking them down and not approving any. Instead of empowering bureaucrats, we're firing them. And they're going out and getting jobs in the private sector for 2 and 3 times what they were making in government. So they started off hating me when we fired them, and now they love me. Instead of raising taxes on domestic producers, we're lowering them and raising tariffs on foreign nations to pay for the damage that they've caused.
Okay, and I will say that if you are a nationalist and you want to see a country be strong on its own, you're going to like what he had to say. I like countries to be strong, independent, and be self-reliant. And then when they come with their partners, they're even stronger, especially if there's a time of war or something like this. The U.S. has really backed Europe and paid most of the military bills over the year. And what they have done in return, rather than building strong countries, was built a strong welfare system. And now they're going to have trouble getting rid of that welfare system. They outsource their oil to Russia, they outsource their manufacturing to China, and they outsource their military to the United States. Now they basically can't do anything on their own. Their manufacturing, because their energy prices are so high, because they invested in the Green New scam, has cleared out to the United States.
And also with the whole nationalist versus globalist, and what we always say here is that we like America first, but not America first just for America, but as a concept that other countries can and should adopt, and where all countries could actually help bring each other up by focusing on their own countries first. In Mexico, and it looks different for every country. In Mexico, it would be take care of the security, massive security issues, the massive corruption issues. But in Chile, it would look different. In Canada, it would look different.
In Canada, they need to bring manufacturing. They have all the raw resources. They should bring those raw resources right to their own manufacturing lines. But instead of doing that, I mean, Canada is just headed in the wrong direction. The World Economic Forum and the Davos elites are just huddling around Mark Carney like he's the new hope because he's standing up to Trump. The truth is, Canada is falling apart as we speak. There are 3 separatist movements. There is possibly a 4th one on the way with British Columbia.
Where we come from.
Mark Carney might be the hope of the neoliberal order, but he's sure not the hope of the Canadian people, because that country, he is taking the silverware as the ship sinks.
And I think they're looking at him because for the longest time, Mark Carney was in the background and was one of those planners of the elites and of globalism that was able to stand in the shadows. And now he's had to step forth. So of course they're going to look up to him, because for the longest time, he has been involved already with all of this, with Agenda 2030, with net zero, or the whole net zero issue that's also consuming Canada. And I think the strongest points are coming from those that are brave enough now and that are in the right by saying, hey, let's look after our own countries first. Maybe that's a good idea.
Well, globalism was a free ride for a lot of these countries, and the United States was funding this through NGOs, through U.S.A, through free military for a lot of these countries, or nearly free military, where the United States had the brunt of the cost. And a lot of these other countries said they were investing in military, but what they were really doing were building bridge projects and other infrastructure projects and writing that off as military spending, thinking they would get one over on the U.S. What Trump wants is for these countries to be strong on their own, so when they unite, they're a real force to be reckoned with. Right now, what happens is the EU is weakening the United States, and the United States realizes they're about to be surpassed. Luckily, Trump came in, and in less than a year, he was able to surpass China. The U.S. now has the #1 economy, and they're growing at a greater rate than China for the first time in a long time. I mean, people just don't understand how he's turned the country around. But Joe Biden was basically handing the country over to China.
As Mark Carney is
doing. That was the plan. And now it looks like a lot of these Western countries are upset that they're not going to get a free ride off the United States. So they're looking to who they can get a free ride off of. And it looks like China may be that cow.
Because that would help China become even more powerful as well.
Yeah, well, Trump said that they need to stand up for themselves. They need to invest in nationalist policies. They need to change their ideology when it comes to the Green New Deal. China came right in there and said, no, globalism is the greatest thing ever. We need to stick with globalism. We're the globalist country. If you want to do globalism, you follow us. We're going to show the speech from one of the Chinese officials later. But Trump is like a father trying to really build some independence within the European Union, and I hope they listen. I don't think the Western Europe is going to listen, but Eastern Europe is a different story. The European Union might fracture, and I could see countries like Hungary, Italy, Poland really separating and going with America's sphere of influence. I think Latin America, we live in Mexico, is going to have a huge benefit as some of these European countries move away, and possibly Canada. Now, I don't think Canada can actually move away. Trump's going to put it into that, and I think this Alberta separatist movement is really going to kind of sit things straight, weaken Canada overall. Europe, on the other hand, has a choice to make. Do they want to go with China or do they want to go with the U.S.? And when it comes to censorship and other kinds of laws that they're bringing in, taking freedoms away from their citizens, it really does look like they're becoming an expansion of the CCP. They have very similar laws to what China is mandating.
And Steve Bannon, of course, put it also the same way from Bannon's War Room, quote, "If you're a globalist, you think Trump flew into Davos and went full gangster. If you're a nationalist, it's the greatest speech since Pericles at Athens."
And again, we are going to keep all the kind of chapter markers from breaking news, personality, politics, religion, the United States, Canada, the EU. But every single section has something from Davos. This was really a restructuring of the global world order. So if you want to kind of understand how things are going to shake up going from this point forward, you're going to want to watch today's show.
If you're a globalist, you just think that Trump flew into Davos and went full gangster. If you're a nationalist, it's the greatest speech since Pericles at Athens. There's no middle ground here. And now President Trump says, yes, we're going to work together, et cetera, but he gave you a nationalist perspective of working, and from a nationalist perspective of working within a community of nations. If you're a globalist.
And why is that so bad is what I could keep thinking. And I also keep seeing different people I follow and people I know share different speeches. Some are sharing the Trump strengthening nationalists, going away from the globalism, and others praising Carney, saying, oh, he did great, he's going after Trump. So it is really that global divide that we're seeing, and the makings of a maybe either multipolar world or continuing both, kind of. So the multipolar global world, but also the multipolar world that has the U.S. and countries that want to look after themselves too.
Yeah, well, we've seen the three major figures kind of step up. You have Trump on one side and Witkoff, as well as the other U.S. administration, really came out hard on the nationalist side. And then you had Mark Carney and Gavin Newsom really stepping up to represent globalism. And I've been saying Gavin Newsom is going to be the candidate for the Democrats in 2028. He's going to have major backing because a lot of these globalists want Gavin Newsom to win and bring the United States back into a globalist model. So 2028 is going to be huge.
Your mic is off. But they were listening to you through mine.
So 2028 is going to be absolutely huge. I hate when my mic messes up.
I know.
After the show, I just pull my hair out.
But thank you so much to Joe Montana. Thank you for letting us know to fix it. I hadn't seen the chat. I just saw it now. Thank you so much. Do you want to say that all again?
No. We can keep going from there, though.
Okay. Let's move on to personality politics, but now all centered around Davos and the WEF and what's happening there.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
I'm still laughing about the mic. So sorry about that, but thank you so much for letting us know, because we do sometimes see people stream out because they can't hear us.
Personality politics is usually social media influencers and how they're influencing politics. But today it's kind of a lot of these Davos speeches. I didn't have a exact country to kind of put them in and that weren't talking about a very specific topic. So let's go here first.
From Disclosed TV, quote, former NATO chair Bauer, it's about rebalancing power between the U.S. and China. I think we will be in this for at least 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, you're going to see these second-tier countries that aren't Russia, China, and the United States have to make a pick on their sphere of influence. A lot of them are outright supporting China. Mark Carney just went to China and made a deal. He's turning his back on the United States, and he's making that very obvious. Number one, he made the deal with China. But number two, when he went to Davos, he made it clear the second-tier countries are going to want to come together and become their own superpower, and they think they can do that through China.
It's interesting because climate change is actually the cause of melting of the ice in the Arctic, and therefore the waters in the Arctic become more and more navigable. And that is good news for China because 90% of the volume of everything that is transported across the world is done by merchant vessels, not value but volume. And so the Chinese benefit from this because the route to Europe and the United States is shortened with about 10 days, which is huge for that. But if merchant vessels can navigate those waters, then naval vessels can navigate them too. And that means that the Russians can bring their Pacific fleet in a much easier and faster way into the North Atlantic Ocean. And unfortunately, we see a very concerning cooperation between China and Russia more and more. China calls itself a near Arctic state, which actually would mean that the Netherlands, my home country, would be a near Arctic state. And what is new is that Russia actually allows China in their Arctic, in their part of the Arctic, which has never happened before, that anyone was allowed there for many and especially strategic reasons. So what you actually see is China keeps Russia in the war in Ukraine. They provide not only political support, because what they said about Greenland now, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in China about Greenland, that it's a sovereign state and internationally recognized borders, and that the U.S. should respect that. I've never heard that announcement with regard to Ukraine towards Russia. So that is interesting. And secondly, they produce no weapons for Russia as they formally state, but they give Russia every part, all the raw materials to make all the weapons that Russia needs. So actually, indirectly, they give weapons to Russia. Now, for me, it's clear that all of this, what we see happening, is about rebalancing power between the U.S. and China. That's where the turmoil comes from. And I think we will be in this for at least 10 to 15 years, hopefully with as little war as possible. But if tectonic plates shift, then there's earthquakes. And if tectonic plates of power shift, there's unfortunately crises and wars. And I think that's what we see now. It's not necessarily a World War III, but it can be regional wars, it can be local wars, but it will be volatile for a while until there is a new balance between those two powers. And although people talk about Russia as a world power, only China and the U.S. actually have the economy to reach their ambitions. Of course, Russia has nuclear weapons, and therefore it is an important country where you have to take into account. But
Okay, and I would actually disagree with the last one. Russia has put itself on the world stage to actually have sovereignty because they have created a siege economy. They've had sanctions on them for years and years and years, and they've been the outcast of the world, and they are absolutely self-sufficient. Even if the world economy collapses, Russia has such an internalized economy with food, with gold, with everything else. They can survive. They're one of the few countries that really arrange themselves in such a manner. They also do all their own military manufacturing. The European Union should have been a world power. Instead of Russia was that third world power. The EU outsourced everything. Like I said, they outsourced their oil and natural gas to Russia. They outsourced their manufacturing to China. They outsourced the military to America. And in the process of that, they outsourced their sovereignty because they can't do anything from themselves, at least not efficiently. The European Union needs to look at Russia and learn a few things on how to nationalize and become self-sufficient again.
But it's also interesting how, I mean, this was a former NATO chief, but it's also interesting to see how a lot of the people that have been in power for a long time or have been involved for a long time, sorry, only see the possibility as being war and power and this and that. But if the multipolar world can coexist together in some sort of way with regions being powerful on their own, then the whole notion of war and World War III and wars, and this is same as what I criticize from people from the US saying that Venezuela was a war and it was going to become a war. Maybe there's a different way of doing things, especially now with the technological, economic, everything has shifted and changed lately.
Well, I've talked a lot over the past year about the ARC Alliance, and people kind of laughed about me. A lot of people don't know what the ARC Alliance is, and they don't think it actually exists, but it's America, Russia, and China. They're the three world powers that actually manufacture their own weapon systems and have a substantial military and can maintain that military. Although they're direct competitors, there is this behind the scenes alliance, I think, to stay out of nuclear war and to kind of stay within your own regions. And I think that multipolar world and who's in what region is kind of being laid out right now.
And I think a lot of the ones, again, preaching war and seeing everything through the lens of war not only benefit from it when it happens, so it's almost like they're expecting or waiting for it to happen. Maybe we can will it into existence or for it to happen again. But also it is a lot of the older crowd, well, the boomers, I'll say, sorry if there's any boomers watching, but they are still in a very different mindset than I think even though Trump is a boomer, but then even people that are coming now into power are. Like, I think a lot of them have understood the change, but they haven't had their voices yet heard.
Yeah, well, I think capitalism created a little bit of a pyramid scheme, especially in Europe and the way they organize that. Trump is really trying to remodel capitalism through tariffs and different economic policies. That being said, the European Union for the last decade has always looked at Russia as their way out. $74 trillion of natural resources. They figured they were going to go in there, take that, and have another 100 years of supremacy. It doesn't look like that's happening right now. Maybe the European Union wants to wait out Trump. Hopefully they get a Newsom or a Marco Rubio, more of a traditional neocon or somebody with the uniparty that will back them to go into Russia because they can't do it on their own.
But let's see, there's one too from Antonio tweets, quote, the funny thing here, and although I agree with this guy that the New World Order is actually ended, the elites are panicking. Trump is dismantling it as we speak. There's a new sheriff in town and he's not taking S from anyone.
Before we listen to this, let's just talk for a minute. We made a video about X versus the New World Order. It was about censorship. That's what we entitled it. And we had a Wikipedia note on the video saying, the New World Order is a conspiracy. It doesn't exist. The fact is, Mark Carney just told China they're moving towards the New World Order. Everybody knows it exists. The fact that they put that note on the video is absolutely crazy.
Well, I think that's an automated one, but it is interesting that for a long time they have been putting these like, oh, so just so you know, if you talk about climate change, they put all these Wikipedia added information under your videos, but I think now they're panicking.
Yeah, one of the other big things is you see these talks, especially when you watch the liberal speeches in Davos, that they're moving away from climate change. Although they believe in censorship, they don't want to talk about it openly. Mark Carney even didn't want to say the word globalism. He's called it the G word. So it definitely shows who's kind of winning this battle right now, and Trump is pushing forward hard.
Mark Carney just announced there's a new world order, and most of us are asking, what does a new world order mean? What it looks like is that Canada has announced its new best friend is China. Prime Minister Mark Carney and the Liberals and the Trump derangement syndrome elbows up lunatics think somehow it's strategically intelligent to align with China. Carney looks like he's trying to win points amongst his globalist friends and amongst the Liberals by claiming a victory to forge an alliance with the enemy of the West, a country that has infiltrated our government, that is spying on our government, that has corrupted our port system, that has poured money into the real estate, ruining the real estate, and somehow the Liberals of Canada think this is good strategy. I can tell you right now, I think Canada is in for a giant wake-up call. I think it's one of the worst moves we could have made. I think it makes Canada look incredibly weak in the West, and we'll see what this new world order means for Canada, but I can bet you it's not going to be good. Mark Carney just...
Yeah, and if Mark Carney continues down this path, this will be an act of war against the United States. He's signing contracts to agree to cooperate with CCP and Chinese intelligence on a lot of different fronts.
More than they already do.
More than they already do, but this will be a serious threat for the United States, especially if we go into this multipolar world. It's very interesting that Mark Carney, just before he went to Davos, signaled and went over to China, signed a major deal, turning his back on the United States, and then he comes out at Davos with this mega speech for globalist elites, and the globalists are now turning to Carney as their leader. Carney's turning to China as his savior. So in my opinion, if they try to stick with this globalized economy or this globalized sort of fascist regime they've been building under neoliberalism, they're going to fall right into China's arms.
And that's, I mean, it's not like China hasn't been involved in Canada and hasn't already had like deep ties within even secret police stations and meddling in the elections, in the Canadian elections several times, proven by CSIS. So it's more of the same, but just turned up to 11 because Carney really is in a desperate position, but he wants to appear. And they're using him, like the globalists are using him to appear as the strong version of what could happen.
Canada and the EU are in a strange spot because they're strong enough to think they can stand on their own 2 feet, but they're not quite strong enough to be a world power. But they don't want to be treated like a tier 2 country, but that's exactly what they are. The United States and China and Russia are tier 1 countries. Russia, not so much, but they do have sovereignty. Places like Mexico, South America, Central America know their place. They know they're tier 2 countries. So they're going to actually benefit a lot because they're going to cooperate a lot more with, in Mexico's case, the United States. A lot of the other tier 2 countries in Asia are just going to cooperate with China. And I think they're going to have a much easier place, and they're going to really hold value within that new system and within that new pole of influence, because the major powers are going to need countries they can trust. America is not going to trust Canada at this point, and they're going to see them as a direct threat, especially when he's making intelligence alliances with China.
And with Mexico, as messy as it is and as terrible as their current government is, there is still a lot of room to grow. There is still a way to make it grow, make it better, and make it actually useful for the United States. With Canada, given all the restrictions and all the policies and everything they've done for the past 10, 15 years, it's no longer useful to the U.S. to even try to partner even more with Canada, especially if they're now complaining and treating the U.S. like it's trying to dominate Canada, which it's not.
Yeah, and I truly believe if this Western hemisphere idea of the U.S. influence is in with that Western hemisphere, the United States is going to want to bring up the countries within those hemispheres so they have somebody to buy their manufacturing goods and to actually manufacture a lot of the non-technologically advanced goods. So it's going to be an add-on benefit for a lot of the countries in Central and South America. And also on top of that, they're not going to want a lot of organized crimes in these countries. They're going to want these countries to be safe to do business now, to build infrastructure within. So I think there's a change coming to a lot of the cartels, a lot of the organized crime within these South and Central American countries.
Yeah, and they've been explicit as well that they do want to try to do it, or at least make their own governments do it. They're not doing it, so now they're coming in to Mexico here, for example. But now let's go on to DEI and the more social part of the WEF right now. From Drea Humphrey, the term DEI is dead. Even the WEF knows it. And they've been saying this over and over again for a few years now once they realized it wasn't going to keep flying.
Yeah, they changed their tune on DEI and climate change in major ways this year. I've watched almost every speech. I watched a lot in full length. I've spent hours the last few days watching these things. And man, how the WEF is changing. And they are talking about they want to gain trust with the general public again. They're not going to do that. And they're not even going to do it through their actions, meaning they're going to need systems that bring radical transparency to the general public. You not only have to be transparent with your actions now, you have to make that easily accessible to the general public so we can see exactly what you're doing, because you were so corrupt over the last decade.
But at the same time, it also goes to prove that what a lot of people have been saying for a long time, while they've been called any kind of OB or IST or etc., was right, and that even the ones that were implementing it initially are realizing how bad of an idea it was.
Where are we in terms of the discussion around DEI, and can it survive the moment it is?
It must survive the moment. Whether we will call it DEI going forward, I don't know. Like everything else that is in flux right now, DEI is also in flux. And there's certainly things that we can learn from the past, things that haven't worked so well, shining the light on the work that we have done, and then kind of evolving it. So my own term that I like to use is fairness, where we create true equal opportunities, but true equal opportunity for everyone.
Fairness seems to be
DEI and ESG, they want to relabel these things and try to put them into hiding, but people are looking closely and it's not going to work. So they're going to need a new U.S. president. So they're going to hope in 2028 they can get Newsom in there and they can bring all this crap back. But that's one opinion at the WEF, and you can see how that's kind of a shattered opinion. It's not upfront in your face that we're going to force the population to change. It's like we need to go into hiding and change the names of these things. But there was another opinion on the stage.
Be a much neutral term, not neutral in a way that it's not it loses strength, but that it's not politically charged, Neil.
Well, I find it interesting that Iris spoke about equality of opportunity. I think that has my full support. The thing that I think went wrong in the last decade or so, slightly more, was that diversity, equity, and inclusion programs started to become about equality of outcome. And they ceased to be about creating equal opportunities. They started being about discrimination. And that I'm against. And I think that has generated the kind of political backlash that you alluded to, Enrique. And of course, what happens then is that the effort to achieve equality of opportunity gets impeded because it gets associated with the very much different objective of equality of outcome. So I think the terminology of diversity, equity, and inclusion has been to a large extent damaged, especially in the world that I live in the academic world. I think that the really problematic part of it was the term equity, which started to be used by the progressive left to me.
Yeah, and we're going to finish watching that clip, but he bang on equity was always the big problem. The other two things were problems as well, but equity is what really shined the light on it in the end because it's what brought the most corruption and created an unfair system.
Equality of outcome. And that is something that no society can prosper if it pursues. So we're seeing, I think, a necessary correction. The danger is that in the process of correction, we end up with a politicization and then an overshoot, which I think would be undesirable. Just one final point. I'm the dead white male on this panel. I'm the kind of the object of a good deal of antagonism, and you might therefore expect me to be somebody who resents the fact that universities, or for that matter, workplaces, have become more diverse in the sense of there being more women in senior positions, more non-white people in senior positions. On the contrary, I think that's great. And I think any institution that I have been a part of has benefited from that. The company I started, Greenmantle, is a very diverse group of people in terms of gender and race, not to mention religion and other characteristics. It's unquestionably a more dynamic and creative group of people than if we were all people like me, dead white males. But the critical thing is that we didn't arrive at that.
But also note how he's having to kind of apologize preemptively and say, yeah, diversity is great in my workplace, it will be great, but I do think there needs to be an overcorrection. He says we don't, but I do think
it's the last part of the statement where he's really going to really sit things straight. I think he was kind of setting up the punchline here, and we're going to hear it.
Diversity by in any way rigging a competitive process to attract the most talented people. If you pursue talent and you're serious about it and you're rigorous about looking for talent, you'll get a diverse outcome. The minute you start to rig the game in order to achieve specific quotas, whether it's in terms of gender or race or any other criteria, and I think you end up damaging your institution because you're sacrificing the objective of excellence to other criteria, which can't take precedence over excellence in any walk of life, and certainly not in academic life.
Oh, and there was a longer clip where he talked about how they're rigging with elites from different countries, meaning they'll hire Indians, but it's Indian.
Oh, it's his next one.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we'll talk for a minute rather than just clip. What I was going to say, maybe I should say it now just so people know. Trump made it very clear he's not going to use military force to take Greenland. And it looks like they have a basic framework for the Denmark to sell Greenland to the United States, possibly $600 or $700 billion plus $150,000 for every person in Greenland, which would make it a $706 billion deal. So, that's probably the question that was on everybody's mind, and he kind of answered it. And I think he softened his speech because I think they got the framework done before he gave his speech. Because Witkoff did give a speech, and he did not soften his words.
But back to like the DEI and everything that has changed the West irreversibly, in my opinion, unless there is an overcorrection. And I do, again, think the chip is still in there where people have to say, no, but diversity is great, diversity is great. Which kind of diversity, number one, and number two, I do agree with what you said earlier, where they're still keeping all of these ideas or just renaming them. And in a lot of cases, and I see it here in Mexico, and I've done a bunch of reports about it, it's moving down south where it can kind of fester and stay and be built into something. So then if in the US they can bring it back, they will immediately, because all those NGOs, all those institutions have now moved down south. They're on a vacation while Trump is there, and then they're hoping they can go back. So they have to keep saying, yeah, but diversity is important, but diversity is great, but we have to be inclusive. Let's just not call it that. Let's call it bridge. Let's call it something else.
Well, usually every year I play a lot of the stuff from Davos, the World Economic Forum, when they have this. And I'm usually just mocking them. This year was a little bit different. Although it was usually 3 people on the panel were liberals or globalists, they had one nationalist or one conservative on the panel. And just having one conservative on the panel made for a dynamic discussion. And it was very interesting because a lot of these panels, it was 3 versus 1, and the 1 was clearly winning because their ideology had first principles and framework that used common sense. And a lot of these liberals did not want to push back because they didn't know what to say.
For example, let's continue with the other bit of the speech from Neil Ferguson from The Future of Inclusion. That's what the panel was called.
And we're going to continue with personality politics, but the next segment is going to be health and MAHA at Davos.
And I think it became obvious in the mid-2010s was that in their efforts to try to redress past discrimination, the proponents of DEI introduced new kinds of discrimination. And this is now well documented, so that it became more or less hopeless for male white candidates to apply for a whole raft of positions in the academy. It was more or less overt. There was also overt political discrimination where conservatives wouldn't get hired. This kind of discrimination became rampant in the elite universities and in ways that were indefensible on any basis. Obviously, two wrongs don't make a right. New wave of discrimination in the name of, say, anti-racism isn't something to celebrate. Discrimination's discrimination. There were all kinds of unintended consequences. If you pursue as a conscious goal having more people of color and make that the criterion, pigmentation, the beneficiaries may very well be people from highly elite backgrounds in, say, India. You don't actually redress any historical wrong by doing that. So what happened was not only new forms of discrimination were brought in on the basis of DEI, but also we ended up with the wrong people being hired. And there were appreciable impacts on the quality of the work that was done. This led to all kinds of really major problems in the academy, rampant plagiarism being one of many symptoms. The publication of absolutely bogus research in phony journals, what my friend Peter Boghossian called the grievance studies industry. And so one can't defend that dilution of academic standards in a university. The lesson I learned observing these processes at work was that once institutions, particularly academic ones, but I think it's also true of commercial institutions, once they start making decisions about hiring or admissions of university and promotion on criteria other than excellence, once they start saying, well, obviously X is the strongest candidate, but he's a white guy, we're not hiring white guys anymore. That's doubly wrong. It's wrong because it's discrimination, and it's wrong because we're about to have a weaker candidate as a matter of choice.
And these kind of things were unheard of to say at Davos. And if you said them at Davos in front of the world's elite, you were sure to have a cancellation when you went back home. Yeah. So I'm glad that there is some diversity of opinion, although it's few and far between. We're obviously the ones choosing the clips, so we are taking those moments where there was that diversity of opinion this year. And I did like a lot of this.
And with DEI, that was the one diversity that they never wanted to include, as you mentioned.
Well, I think this was the neoliberal framework all along. They wanted diversity through skin color, but not diversity through ideology. So they can say we're extremely diverse when they had 90 to 98% neoliberal ideology in most universities, in academia, and in business. And that is a huge problem. And it's a way they could set up a system to kind of virtue signal, say, oh, we have diversity, when really they weren't diverse in the least when it came to ideology.
And with the fact that this kind of thoughts and speech are being said out loud at the WEF and Davos, that alone goes to prove that that side is winning, and that the fact that they're having to include these opinions that they find so reprehensible just goes to show that at least they're breaking through and there is some kind of change happening, and they realize it, they just don't want to admit it.
Well, and it's also very interesting because everything is kind of being televised or put out there through a live stream. So small independent media shows are going in depth. I mean, our whole show is usually about 3 hours. It's all clips of Davos by region, by country, by religion. And that being said, the mainstream media is only playing a little clip here or a little clip there. So the narrative is really controlled by the independent media now. And the independent media generally doesn't have a good outlook on Davos or the WEF. I think it is a little bit better this year because there was some diversity of opinion. But again, a lot of that ideology is so deep rooted. I mean, you're going to see some clips later on that is just like, how do they come to these conclusions?
And a big kudos to all of the independent media that are over there, like Rebel News from Canada, which is where those two clips are from. Also, Billboard Chris, for example, is there protesting? Still haven't heard much about that, but it's good that also independent media people are going and are giving the other side too.
Well, I don't think we're hearing much. We used to work with Billboard Chris when we used to live in Canada before we moved to Mexico City. And we haven't heard much from him in Davos. The neoliberal order or the globalist order is really running head on away from the transgendered issue. They know that's absolute poison for any 2028 election or any election in Europe right now.
And especially the clip at last year's Davos or 2 years ago where Billboard Chris was outside standing with his sandwich board sign saying, what was it called? What does it say? Children cannot consent to puberty blockers. They brought a picture of him up on stage and said, oh, there's these kinds of people outside, but here we are protecting our friends and the LGBTQ community. And now they're not really talking about it.
Well, we have one more clip in personality politics, and then we're going to read comments before we go to health and MAHA, according to Davos.
We have two more.
Oh, we have two more. Okay. If you have any comments, get them in now. We'll read them. At the end of each section, we do read all comments.
Yes. So from Colin Rugg says, quote, Finnish president says Europe can defend itself without the U.S. before saying 11 minutes later that he never said Europe can defend itself without the U.S.
And this was a big thing with a lot of the liberals on the panel. They would say one thing at the beginning, but because there was a diversity of opinion, meaning there was usually one conservative on the panel, different thoughts would be thrown in, and then they would be asked a similar question at the end, and they would completely contradict their first answer.
First is a direct answer to the question of this panel: can Europe defend itself? My answer is unequivocally yes.
Without the Americans?
Without the Americans, I mean,
how?
Well, look.
But you're relying on them for these key elements. You've said earlier that Europe can defend itself without the Americans. If it comes down...
not exact, Mike, that's not a quote.
More or less, more or less.
Let's...
we'll go back to the transcripts, yeah. More or less, more or less.
I love journalists.
But if it comes...
First is a direct
That's
answer.
not two different interviews or some YouTuber clipping that. That is literally 11 minutes later in the same dialogue. He's completely changed his opinion. It just shows the contradictory nature of the ideology, especially because if he has that opinion and then they have a discussion and he thinks he's losing that discussion, if he gives that same opinion, he loses all ability to say he's speaking the truth. So he prefers to change the opinion. But then he gets clipped and it's...
But no, we only had that one clip. That was the last one. I got confused, sorry. But first of all, thank you so much to Joe Montana for letting us know that the sound was off.
Oh, we used
really
to,
helpful.
because we used to have hardly any comments maybe a year ago, and sometimes I wouldn't have the sound button hit on my mic, and then we would go the whole episode, and I would just be livid because he told us so early. I'm not so angry now.
Yes, because usually he turns it off when I do my own live after this live, and we just forgot to turn it back on.
Yeah.
Joe Montana also asks, this might be a good one for you, asks, what's the toughest thing about making a YouTube channel, and were you guys scared shitless your first time on camera?
We were absolutely scared shitless our first time on camera, and we've got better over the years, but the only reason we started a YouTube channel, our original channel was, it's a different name now. What's it called?
Yeah, it's called Nat and Tu Idioma.
It was originally our English channel, but when we moved to Mexico, we realized we weren't being pushed out to an English audience because we were broadcasting from Mexico City. So we turned that to our Spanish channel. All of our original content's on that channel. And we started the channel when we went to the truckers' protest in Canada, the Freedom Convoy. We just were absolutely pushed to our wits' end, and the government had their boot on the general public's neck, and they kept pushing and pushing and pushing. It just wasn't with one or two things. It seemed to be with everything. The Canadian government was getting extremely authoritarian. I said we had to do something. So we went down to the border and we just filmed with our iPhones. And then I said, well, we'll talk on camera. And then we tried. We were stuttering. We were scared shitless. So we got home and I said, well, oh God, we have to do something. So I said, let's just put a voiceover. So we tried to do the voiceover. An hour later, we each had a voiceover we did to the video, which was about 3 or 4 minutes. We re-recorded and re-recorded. We published that. The next time we went to another protest on the border with the trucker convoy, and we were on camera that time when we interviewed some people, when we got braver and braver and braver. And then eventually we went on camera as talking heads, and that's a whole different ball game. You can really see that we left everything on our original channel. So we
It's
can watch.
linked down on the description of this channel.
Yeah, so we can watch the evolution of us, and so we can tell other people, like, you're going to come through some hardships if you're really trying to do this. We never really wanted to be YouTubers. We just kind of wanted to push back on the government. And it ended up being not just the Canadian government. A lot of the Western governments are now doing the exact same things and going even further. So we've just continued the channel at that point.
Yeah.
And
we were kind of working in the film industry, and we both knew we had an interest in, be it photography, film, doing something eventually, but not like just right now, because they're putting boots on people's necks, basically, or horses' feet in people's necks in Canada. So we have to do something, and we kind of have a skill set, but not really. And it has been a lot of I'm almost fully self-taught for editing. I never went to school for editing or did anything until I just opened up the editing program and just Googled and YouTubed every single thing. And how do I do this? How do I do that? And same, I guess, for you with the camera setup, because you're more the producer. I'm the post-production. So he does all the sets, the camera, the lighting, and all of that was from zero, because that wasn't our area of expertise.
Well, yeah, and my back was going out around the same time. So I used to do construction. I also worked in mines. I worked in oil fields. I did a lot of security work. My back was going out, so I knew I had to make a career change. I decided, well, I'll buy some cameras and I'll try YouTube, because I don't know what I can do for the rest of my life if I have a bad back. And I said, possibly I can do that. And at the same time, we were trying to push back against the government at that time. So I got a job at a little drugstore that sold camera equipment, and it gave me 50% discount on all the cameras. So I started buying camera equipment while I was working 4 jobs and trying to save to flee the country and come to Mexico.
Yeah, because we knew we wanted to leave to go to Mexico. But again, it took 4 years of you having like 4 jobs and me having 2, and then working 12 hours a day. It wasn't instantaneous, and we're still kind of trucking along with YouTube. And I don't know what the hardest part. What is the toughest thing about making a YouTube channel?
The toughest thing, or the thing that is the most time consuming, is editing, and she does most of the editing. That's why as our channel progressed, we did less and less editing, more and more lives. And when we did film like a talking head that was going to be edited, we tried to do it in 2 or 3 takes. So there would be very, very little editing, and we wouldn't have much time consumed on that. And then our editing style became, we need to make it look okay, but let's try to make it look good in camera. So we have to edit very, very little, because when you're doing it all yourself, and I don't know how to edit, she does all the editing. It's a lot of work for her. So, and especially when we try to run 2 channels, we try to do one in Spanish, one in English.
And the Spanish one is on me as well. So
yeah, because I can't speak Spanish.
I've taken a long time now to edit even one video for the Spanish channel. Sorry to everybody that does watch Nat and The Guy. But now we're kind of working with having edited videos that are simpler in English to edit. Essentially, we just kind of do like a rough cut, and that's what goes out. With that, eventually, we would like to be able to get out news videos 1 or 2 times a day.
Yeah.
But that's going to take a while.
But we also took the last year to do all lives, because we were really, really bad on camera. And it was showing when we were trying to do edited videos. We're not comfortable talking. So last year, just doing these lives has really helped, especially now that we're going back to edited videos. We're a bit more comfortable. Also, we have a little switcher here. Let you hold it up. The other side. No, on camera. Those buttons allow us to change scenes. So it makes it easy if we want to bring things up on screen rather than trying to edit it in later. That will eat up a lot of time. So if you're trying to start a channel, try to figure out how to do it live on camera. And if it looks bad, you'll get better over time, and you won't have to waste time on editing.
And also learning to, for example, like when I talk to camera, I kind of train myself not to think that there's a camera there, because that was the biggest blocker. Like now, if I look at the camera, I'm not really fully conscious that I'm looking at a camera. It's just like, oh, it's my turn. I'm speaking. So I speak this way, but I don't focus on the camera. And I think that's what a lot of people do. And I did in the beginning, and you feel the camera. But if you just look a little bit beyond the camera initially, or look at like a light or wherever your camera is set up, and just try to find a point where you don't think it's a camera. Because a lot of people have the suggestion as, stick a picture of somebody on like near the camera and just pretend you're talking to them. That doesn't work. At least it didn't work for me. But kind of looking beyond the camera and not thinking, oh, I'm being recorded, I'm being filmed. That's what really helped me, because it took me, like, you can go to our other channel. It took me a long time to get like this animated. And even after we moved to Mexico, we'd been making videos for a while. I look like AI, and I got a lot of comments saying, "Oh, this is AI." In my Spanish videos, they
It
would say,
wasn't
"Oh,
AI.
this is a bad
But then
translation."
she did over skin correction.
That too, yeah.
So
'Cause I was
she
learning
looked
how
like
to
AI.
edit. Yeah.
You
So I
were
was trying to
learning
learn how to edit and how to
And
correct things.
I look back at it, it looks ridiculous.
It looks
but
really
it was
bad.
part of the learning experience, and it is important to kind of leave that stuff on your channel.
Yeah.
So
A lot of people take it out, and I think it's encouraging when other YouTubers, because I don't see them, unless you're looking at the YouTubers that tell you how to make a channel, how to get to 1,000 subscribers. Normal YouTubers don't fully talk about like how it was at the beginning, what they did, what kind of equipment they use, what is necessary, what isn't. They just kind of assume nobody cares about it. But I think it is encouraging when I hear other people that do this talk about their journey and what works, what doesn't, what were the like missteps. But I think a lot of people are too scared to go back to that. To
also,
how it
like when you're talking about talking to camera, I still can't do it. I attempted on Tuesdays and Thursdays to have my own show. I would just put so much news on there and just like read the news really quick because I still get so nervous. Having Nat here to kind of talk to makes it easier for me, so I'm actually able to do it. So I do suggest, if you're still not comfortable talking to a camera because it's the hardest thing, have somebody else to talk to, and it does make it a lot easier. A lot of times I won't look at the camera, I'll look at Nat when I'm still talking now.
And it could be like via Zoom or online, or because we see that format popping up everywhere.
Yeah, but we did get lucky that you did get comfortable with camera fairly quickly, so.
Yeah, and now I run a whole Spanish show on my own, like a Spanish live show on my own. And I talk about a million things. I kind of lose whatever script I pretend to have or whatever news I'm talking about. I just forget about it and just talk to the audience and read. I think reading a lot of the audience's comments also helps if you're doing lives, because it builds that connection and it kind of lets you go into different tangents without it looking like you just forgot what you're talking about.
Yeah, and honestly, like
but some people do say I'm too scattered a little
yeah,
bit.
but a lot of the bigger YouTubes are just reading straight off the teleprompter, and you can tell, especially Ben Shapiro, even with his live, you can see it's all prepared and he's reading. And then you look at somebody like Nick Fuentes, even though I'll agree with a lot of his views, but not all of them, he has a skill where he's completely unscripted. He's able to bring comedy in there. We're not at a point where we're bringing comedy in, but not going off a script, I think, is important, but it takes a long, long time to kind of learn that skill.
And also, even going off a script on your head, because you did this a lot at the beginning, and I was doing it too, and I realized I have to stop when I was filming by myself, is you kind of know what you want to say, but then you're trying to say that same exact thing over and over again. If you're like editing a video and you're trying to like do a take, and you're like, okay, but I'm supposed to say this, and then I didn't say it correctly, so I have to redo it and retake it. Just say it whatever way, just get the point across.
Yeah, because we do a show that's geopolitics. We talk geopolitics 3 times a week, and I'm literally watching the news every single day. So I do have a general good knowledge of what I'm talking about now. So it's easy for me to talk about anything and relate it to other subjects. I think in the beginning it was a lot harder because I knew a lot about Canadian politics, but not a lot about world politics.
Yeah.
Okay, let's continue.
And then Trent Briggs says, arrest Don Lemon. Well, it seems like they might try.
Well, they need to. Then they need to make an example out of him. Just because you say you're a journalist doesn't give you the right to kind of break the law. And he did have that extra video where he was talking about how they were planning it out. That was breaking the law in itself. Now, I don't think I do agree with Tim Pool here. He doesn't need a huge sentence, but he does need a slap on the wrist and maybe a few days in jail and a fine.
Yeah, to be like, hey, calm down.
Yeah, and if he continues, then continue up the punishment
eventually. And we'll read comments from RUMBLE. We are also on RUMBLE, and Ethel, as always, is
good
here
to see you again, Ethel.
Thank you for being here. Ethel says, by your attire, guys, I can say it's a bit freezing in Mexico today. A clear sign of the climate change as we're moving back into the ice age. It's freezing here, but we've had a cold wave for like a week.
And
and usually I try not to get we use bulky things on camera or turtlenecks because I don't like how it looks. But today I was like, I'm freezing. I don't care.
Well, and Texas, man, I was seeing the stories coming out of Texas. If they get the storm they're expecting, it's going to be 3 inches of ice. The power lines are going to freeze up. There's going to be no power. A lot of people could potentially lose their lives. So I'm kind of keeping an eye on that.
Hopefully not. Ethel also says, hypothetically, if Russia conquered Europe and freed it from all of the ABCD plus policies, would you approve the EU becoming part of Russia, Guy?
Well, I think naturally the EU and Russia are in the same sphere of influence. I don't think Russia needs to conquer it. They had a great relationship before where Russia had the raw materials, where Russia had the oil and natural gas. They would give it to Europe. Europe would refine it all, make it into cars and finished products and sell it to the world. Everybody kind of benefited. It's a natural alliance. That alliance now, because the EU has Russia derangement syndrome, has pushed Russia into China's arms, and now China and Russia have that relationship. The EU had a lot to benefit. I think the EU always wanted to take the natural resources from Russia and become the king of the world again, and that's just kind of fallen apart. But if they're not going to do that, I think a natural alliance is between Russia and the EU, just because of the raw minerals and the oil and natural gas. And Europe needs all that stuff. And Europe has the technological advancements to make the finished products.
Yes. Ethel also asks, speaking of the New World Order, now when it's crystal clear that CommuTube is censoring you guys, yeah, it is, but it's been forever.
It's not only censoring us.
Wait, but there's more questions.
Oh, okay.
Are you going to reconfigure your anticipated business model, keeping the New World Order in mind?
I'm not reconfiguring anything. I'm leaning harder into it. We spent the last year doing lives, and now we're starting to do videos again. And I'm like, oh, what should we do? Do we want views, or what are we gonna do? I was like, screw it. Just do what we're comfortable on camera with and what we know. So like a lot of censorship against X, different political theory,
digital ID, digital currency.
Topics that are going to be repressed. And so we started making videos, and man, are they being repressed. Yes. We're talking 10 or 15 views, maybe 30 views for a good video. And I mean, our lives are getting a couple hundred views. Mm-hmm. So it's obvious that certain topics are being repressed, but I'm not going to turn away from them. I'm just going to lean in harder. And
the plan is also to bring those, for example, edited videos, because we tried doing lives on X, but it wasn't going anywhere, but bringing those edited videos also into X just as full videos, and also doing short, so maybe, or like long short videos, so maybe eventually we'll catch some kind of wave on an algorithm, but I'm not fully concerned with that.
No, and also my big goal for the English channel, because it's so hard to grow an English channel when you're broadcasting from a country like Mexico, it really pushes you out to your region first, and a lot of people don't speak English. But the big goal is just to get 1,000 subscribers and to get monetized. If our English channel can get monetized, it's actually worth 8 times more than a Spanish channel. You're paid a lot more for an American and Canadian audience, which even if they're suppressing our videos, I'll be fine with that if we can hit monetization. Mm-hmm. Our Spanish channel has like 11,000 subscribers, but we don't make a lot because it's mainly
and I've also
Spanish payouts
content
are different.
Yeah. And also because we moved studios, and we had like the last 4 months have been just doing things that also take our time away from me. For example, being able to sit down a whole day and edit 3 to 4 videos. So trying to ramp that up as well.
Well, and I'm just still trying to learn everything. So even if they're censoring the video, a lot of it has to do with
learning,
still getting more comfortable on camera. How do we want to change something, things like this. So we're still now learning. We learned edited videos, then we learned lives, and now we're trying to do both at once, which is a lot of work for 2 people. Okay, let's continue.
And Ethel also asks, Ethel says, I only watch Nat and The Guy nowadays because they are not taking anyone's money yet, but don't you fret. Once investors step in, we'll probably witness the New World Order affecting both Nat and The Guy.
No. Not very likely.
And we've always said, like, if we ever do or want to branch out and do like documentaries or something, 100% crowdfunded. I'm not interested in taking money and not being able to say things that I want to say.
Well, and also the amount of money I need to actually be happy. Like ultimately, I want to have a child, and
more than one child.
More than one child, but I don't need a ton of money. I know what makes me happy in life. I don't need a lot more for that. I think the two channels, even though they're growing slowly and getting repressed, I think there's enough money that can be made there. I think I can eventually make $1,500 or $2,000, hopefully, a month off of that.
That would be a lot.
That would be a lot compared to what we make now.
Yeah, but we've like.
But if I can make that, I don't really need a sponsorship because I'll be happy with that amount of money.
But also, while we were like saving up money to come to Mexico and Canada, we were also living on like very meager means, and like we were really tight, and so we were kind of used to doing that as well.
We don't do anything. No. We stay in the house, make videos, edit, do lives. So we buy some groceries and then our electric bill, and that's pretty much it.
And Ethel also asks me, Nat, would you consider renaming your Spanish channel into Nat y Mi Güey? I actually thought about doing something similar initially, but then because he doesn't speak Spanish, and for the longest time I had it as Nat and the Guy in Español because I wanted to include him in the fact that he's the producer, he's the one that does all the set and everything, and it's not just me, so I didn't want people to know it was just me because it's not true. But eventually, lately, we have seen, it might be better to have just me as a presence in Spanish and Nat and the Guy together. I think it works the best because, yes, learning a new language is really hard. Learning a new language once you're older is also pretty hard. So that's going to take a while. So when and if the guy can speak Spanish fluently, then maybe I'll rename the channel to Nat y Mi Güey. But for the longest time, it's been just me, and that's fine. It's easier.
Yeah, well, I told you
easier to divide them too.
Recently, because both channels were called Nat and the Guy, and one was in English, one was in Spanish, and then we just changed it so it was just you on the Spanish, and I think it's less confusing for people.
Yeah.
Especially when you go on like WDW Pro and you're trying to promote the channel, it's easier just to have two channels with different names.
Yeah. And Joe Montana asks, for some reason, I think either YouTube or our system is suppressing this next comment because I can't bring it up on screen, but he asks, I'm going to assume it's a he, did you know Trump is pushing Real ID and face scans at airports? That's an effing digital ID. If I were you, I wouldn't trust him. I don't trust, only verify. And we continue to say that constantly. Like, one of the big worries about this whole border security thing in the States is that it could be used to implement, alongside with Larry Ellison and a bunch of other people, as a great excuse to start implementing digital ID. And we know that a lot of them want to do that.
Well, yeah, they want to clean up voter rolls and they want a voter ID and immigration and the border. This is how they're going to bring the digital ID in. Digital ID, digital currency are the places we push back the most. If they want to bring in digital currency in, they need to make sure there's a physical currency or some kind of gold-backed currency to actually so they don't have total control over the population. And those are two of the biggest subjects we talk about. And I will say, yeah, I do like Trump. I understand he's pushing those things in. I push back on the things I don't like with Trump, whether it's Epstein, whether it's digital ID, whether it's digital currency. That being said, he is doing a lot, and I want to praise politicians that do good things. So it kind of helps other politicians to kind of emulate and do similar things. We gotta praise people when they do good things and really push back when they do bad things. And I think a good opportunity for this is Trump thinks he's going to be impeached if he doesn't win the midterms. So he's supposed to have a ton of rallies where he's going to be present. And if people boo him or call him a PDF file or whenever he gets on stage, really hit him on the things that they don't like, he'll change those policies so he can keep doing the rallies. I mean, he was big on the jibby jab when he released it. He completely changed once he started getting booed at his rallies. He didn't just change, he actually brought RFK in, took down from 72 jibby jabs to 11. I mean, he took real action. So hopefully when he goes to promote the midterms, people are going to let him know how he feels. I think he gets kind of insulated while he's president, but when he's out on the campaign path, that's going to be an opportunity for people to let him know how he feels. But compared to other politicians, man, he's head and toes above a lot of other politicians on a massive amount of issues. Now, that doesn't mean he's good on every issue.
But I also think a lot of commentators that were really backing him and behind him and were really supportive of him, and I can think of a bunch right now, completely 180'd as soon as they weren't getting the things as fast as they wanted them to, especially during this new term. And so there's a lot of criticism of Trump from people that were actually helped him win as well. And I think that's disingenuous of those commentators to not point out the things that are actually happening. And in a lot of ways, I do see them trying to use now that anger against Trump as just for clicks and views. And I don't think that that's an honest position. I know you don't like him too much, and he's very milquetoast for a lot of people, but Tim Pool actually is able to discern and say he's doing good on this is actually working, this isn't working. And he is one of the few that I see not fully either hating or cheerleading for Trump, which is, I think, the most honest way to actually do it.
Well, the fact that I can actually go pros and cons with Trump, and most of the time there's more pros than cons, although some of the cons are absolutely huge. Every other politician I do, it's just con. Oh, major con. Okay, now there's one good thing, and that one good thing really just supports one of the cons they're doing. Yeah.
And
that's very apparent at Davos. His ideology and the ideology of his administration, although I don't like some of the things, man, it is winning, and it's winning big, and it's completely opposite of this global world order that they had.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, he is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, meaning if a Gavin Newsom or a Democrat gets in after him, or even a neocon conservative gets in, like a Marco Rubio, man, the globalists are going to be in a very good position because of all the things Trump did.
Mm-hmm. Last 3 comments, and then we'll continue.
Yeah, sorry.
Joe Montana asks, do you guys take requests for interesting guests to interview? It will help you get more views for your show.
We've been saying, if you know any guests or contact information for any guests, we want to do more interviews.
Yes.
So just...
so the email is natandtheguy@gmail.com, or you can DM or via Instagram, via X. Yeah, via Instagram or X.
Yeah, I think we've done a couple interviews now, and it was from
But we've always been interviewed. We've never brought on
anyone. Well, you brought on
in Spanish, I have. But this year we really want to focus on...
A subscriber recommended somebody through email, and then we went and interviewed them. It was an interesting interview.
Yeah.
So
religious guy. And Trent Briggs says, not a fan of digital currency. I'm terrified of it.
No, and we're going to get more into Davos. Hopefully we get through all the segments today, but economists especially, we're talking about digital currency and the state of currency and what's happening. And they're extremely scared that the private market is going to undermine CBDCs. And if you don't know a lot about digital currency, a lot of people won't know what a stable coin is, but this is what Trump's trying to bring in. And he's trying to back a lot of the stable coins with a gold or with a silver. So it is actually backed with some kind of physical asset. And they want to build in freedoms to that digital currency. Why? Because he wants to undermine CBDCs that have complete control, that can be programmed, because he wants to make these stable coins the currency of choice for people in the EU and other countries. But it looks like they're going to leave a regular currency with the stable coin, which I would much, much prefer because I do not like digital currency. But CBDCs are the worst because they're completely programmable. And we've seen how they're shutting down people's bank accounts in the truckers' protest in Canada.
Mm-hmm. Even without needing that, so... And last one, Ethel says, I'll just read these two concurrently. Says, Nat, you didn't get it. In Spanish, you can name the channel as Me Way while keeping it in English as The Guy. I know, but it's just easier if it's just me for now. And Ethel also says, Tim Poop takes too much money from Israel. Don't follow his footsteps, please. I don't, and again, it's that's the same line of thinking that I think is not actually useful or honest to go down. If you're just like, oh, they're in Israel.
I disagree because I believe they're all working for intelligence agencies, whether it's the MI6, whether it's Israeli intelligence, whether it's different factions within the CIA or FBI. I think big political commentators, especially on YouTube and in social media, are getting boosted, and that's how they get big. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of good small commentators that never really break through because I don't think they take bribes.
But then talking about his opinions and what he actually puts out there, I think his milquetoastness makes him pretty balanced.
No, I think he's tied in way too close with the administration, even though I like a lot of things about the administration. Yeah. Him and Benny Johnson are very tightly aligned.
But he's had a lot more criticisms than Benny Johnson has had.
Okay.
And criticisms that we've also agreed on with him on.
I think he's working for somebody for sure. And he's building a narrative.
Working for somebody.
Yeah, it's because they are.
Okay, now let's move on to health and MAHA. That took a while, sorry.
But the greatest danger of all would be to do nothing.
And of course, at the WEF, they have to and want to talk about health because that has been for the longest time one of their big points.
Well, most of the articles that came up when it comes to health, MAHA, and education at Davos, because everything's related to Davos today, was in the context of AI. So I think almost every clip in this section is related to AI and healthcare or AI and education.
From Wide Awake Media, quote, speaking at Davos, Bill Gates announces a partnership with OpenAI to integrate AI into health systems. So it's time to get some diapers.
AI is entering into the health system, but not just into the health system, it's all the way down to the level of the patient. So the patient is able to talk in their local language and describe what's going on. And so in order to make this a reality, to see what works, what doesn't work, we're thrilled that OpenAI and the Gates Foundation are committing an initiative called Horizon 1000, where we'll go into 1,000 primary healthcare clinics in Africa, and you have different systems that we have to connect into. Although not this initiative, there's obviously a lot going on in India as well. And so, over the next couple of years, I would expect developing world health may even get ahead of rich world because the need is so great, and the governments are embracing this and making sure that it's moving at full speed. AI.
What he did with jibby jabs in India and genetically modified seeds in India actually had the Indian government prosecuting him, and he wasn't welcome in the country for a long time. I don't know how that case went. It's something I didn't keep up on. I'm assuming that it kind of, he paid the right people off, especially because it's India. That being said, I do not trust this guy whatsoever. Let's see what works and what doesn't work. Well, a lot of people are going to die when you do that. And a lot of these projects Bill Gates is involved in, people are falling by the wayside, and there is a human price to these projects.
Yeah, Africa and India are his guinea pigs. And we've seen that. And we've seen the negative effects of him going in there and implementing the things he says he wants to. Now bringing in AI, which is also terrifying, in my opinion.
Well, he virtue signals like he's doing something great. But then when you look at what he's doing, it's like, what the hell are you doing? He said he was going to do carbon capture. So he started cutting down massive swaths of thousands of acres of forest and burying the trees, saying this is carbon capture. And it was absolutely ridiculous. And the only fact that got uncovered was because of an independent journalist.
And then he also tried to block the sun, if you remember from last year.
He's still doing that with, I always forget about that. The UK government is working with Bill Gates to cloud farm to try to block out the sun in a country that's already cloudy, that needs more sun for their farming. Absolutely crazy. That could have massive global effects.
With chemicals that they haven't fully researched what effect it has on the people, on the soil, on the animals, on the long-term health of the country.
Well, it's freezing here in Mexico and it's freezing in Texas, but we need more cloud seeding, I guess, according to Bill Gates.
But also from Wide Awake Media, quote, speaking at Davos, Andre Hoffman, WEF co-chair and vice chairman of pharmaceutical giant Roche, claims the World Economic Forum exists to confront the defining challenges of our time.
At a time when science confirms that humanity has already transgressed 7 of the 9 planetary boundaries, as highlighted in a planetary health check in September 25 from the Potsdam Institute, the challenge before us is no longer one of just awareness, but of action, making the need for collective responsibility, decisive leadership, and meaningful dialogue more urgent than ever, as Larry just underlined. For over half a century, leaders from across the globe have regularly gathered here in Davos, in Switzerland, to confront the defining challenges of our time. This is why the World Economic Forum exists. Since 56 years, it is the international organization for public-private cooperation. A space where government, businesses, and civil society come together at a time when science...
Okay, and a lot of people might not understand what he's saying, but a lot of people at Davos were saying these things in smaller interviews, but this used to be the main framework they used to push forward, and that was a public-private partnership. That means government and businesses like Facebook, like X, and other companies would implement government policies, meaning they would implement censorship through social media companies, and the government wouldn't have to do it themselves because there's laws on the books for the government not to do that. And they were making these public-private partnerships in all kinds of industries, and this was the big goal of the WEF for decades, and they were successful on a lot of fronts, but now people are kind of paying attention.
Because we've also, it's escalated so much that we're seeing the negative effects. Same as with DI, same as with the social stuff.
We can go into the religion section now, just because we're going to fall behind if we don't.
Okay. Well, this doesn't have to do with, oh, hold on. Should I read the comments beforehand?
Oh, yeah. Let's read the comments for this section, and then we'll move on to religion. We got one story in there.
So Joe Montana says, this is one of my favorite shows, but it's sad YouTube pushes propaganda channels and mainstream BS. But you guys have what it takes. You're really talented. I'm sure you'll do good. Thank you so much. And it's nice to hear it.
Well, and as much as they do censor our regular videos, and I don't shy away from the subjects, which maybe I should, they're trying to tell me something, our lives are getting more successful. So I'm happy for that. If we have 100 100 views on a video. I'm happy for small victories. And because I can remember when I was getting 8 or 9 views a video.
One.
And there was a few videos nobody would watch.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to have comments.
Yes. And then also like the being censored, it comes with the territory of what we actually want to talk about. And like if we were just talking about random stuff that we know wouldn't get censored, then it wouldn't be as interesting to do.
Well, and I also think like we're getting better at our lives in our edited videos. And if the Canadian separatist movement starts to catch wind and then there's an election called in Canada, plus the midterms are coming up in the States, that's going to be huge for small political channels. So hopefully we get some growth there.
But thank you so much for the nice comment. Okay, now let's move on to religion, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God.
And just one story, and it has to do with that...
Don Lemon.
Yes, Don Lemon. And that ridiculous, but... Concerning protest at the church.
This was the main agitator that went into the church with Don Lemon, and they had the protest in the church. He still hasn't been arrested. They need to get on this.
Yeah, Mariana Fall says, quote, "Come arrest me. You can't end the revolution. Terrorizing kids at Sunday service and calling yourself a revolutionary is insane." This guy just looks insane.
I mean, what we're seeing around this country is they're using their political influence to attack people that disagree with them. They're going to come at me with charges, and I'm not scared of that. There's no base for these charges. I did not block them from, their service. They welcomed us in. They never asked us to leave. The police never came in and removed.
Number one, they never welcomed them in, and they asked them to leave almost immediately. The head preacher asked them to leave, and multiple people in the congregation asked them to leave. He's trying to reframe this so people that haven't seen the incident will be
but
on his
also,
side.
he's saying they're using their political power to repress me or to not. You're doing the exact same thing.
Us, so we didn't stop their service. In fact, people were still praying the entire time. The music was
For
still
you to
playing
go.
the entire time. So Pam Bondi, you want to come and arrest me? You want to come and give me charges? So be it. And for all the people giving me death threats, threatening my life, kill me. Go ahead, kill me. Because you know what? As Fred Hampton said, you can kill the revolutionary, but you can't kill the revolution.
He wants to be a martyr so bad it's cringy.
Well,
Like,
they do need to arrest him, and he did commit a major crime there, so he could get quite a bit of time, especially before the midterms. You're going to want to get these agitators that are going to turn a lot of these things violent. You're going to want to get them off the street. So now's a good time when there are these protests. Anybody that does get violent and actually goes beyond protesting into violence, arrest them right away, give them lengthy sentences, because the tension is amplifying. Protests are okay, but when they turn violent, that's the line.
Or when they're actually trying to prosecute or go after people that have nothing to do with what you're actually protesting against. Like the church. Why the church? And they knew it would get probably
First
a
of
lot
all,
of
that's
attention.
private property. So when they're asked to leave, they have to leave. And they did not do that. It was all on camera. And there are...
It was pre-planned.
Yeah, it was pre-planned there. And they were going after religious people, which is specifically a no-no under a lot of laws.
Under the own laws they wanted to pass for the abortion clinics.
Under protected classes. I constantly talk against protected classes when it comes to Muslims or Jewish people or even Christian people. And in this case, it happened to be a Christian group, and a lot of those laws are going to apply. Although I don't agree with those laws, and I think they create specialty classes in order to bring in hate speech on the back of those specialty classes.
Hate speech laws.
Yeah. This is one case where they're going to find out maybe everybody should be equal under the eyes of the law.
No, maybe they should. But let's move on to migration, because that was only one story there.
The immigration policies in Europe are a disaster. You're destroying Europe. You're destroying the culture of Europe.
Sorry. Remigration. I always say it wrong.
Okay, we got one story in remigration. Then we're going to get into geopolitics by region.
Davos related.
Yeah, Davos related.
From World News, quote, "In a bombshell revelation, top White House officials disclosed that the United States is finalizing a staggering $700 billion cash offer to buy Greenland outright from Denmark, plus 100,000 lump sum payments to each of its around 57,000 residents, totaling nearly $706 billion.
Yeah, and this was reconfirmed today. So this isn't finalized or anything like that, but this is the framework EU leaders are saying that they're kind of coming to right now.
I mean, if we could move to Greenland, then that'd be great.
It's too cold.
We're from Canada. Well, I'm from Mexico. Is that just a plane landing?
Okay, you can leave it. Yeah, it's just a plain landing. But that is the framework they've been working on. It was rumored since yesterday, since before Trump came. I think Trump dramatically toned down his speech because they're getting close to finalizing that deal. And one more thing I wanted to say about Greenland, and that is Trump made it very clear why they want Greenland, and it's because of shipping lanes. And I've talked about this multiple times on this show. Every time they wargamed a war with China, they lost, except when they used one strategy, and that was cutting off shipping lanes. Greenland is a very important strategic point to cut off shipping lanes, especially into the Arctic, especially because China is no longer respecting Canada's sovereign territory, and they're just cutting through Canadian Arctic water. Canada can't protect the North right now, so one of the big shipping lanes that these ships are going through is between Canada and Greenland. Also, he made it very clear that the Golden Dome he wants to create, one of the big strategic points is in Greenland. This is a multi-trillion-dollar system, and one of the big strategic points is in Greenland and Alaska.
We do have one comment from Ethel.
Okay.
I do like how Ethel divides the comments by like section. Eventually I will, when I have time, try to put chapter markers after the lives go up so people can just jump to whatever section they want. Ethel says, Nat knows everything about remigration. Nat, you should set up a video course using your know-how. I don't know. I mean, I did remigrate, I guess, to Mexico, but it took a tyrannical government to get me there. And then my hopes and dreams essentially being dashed, realizing I could never have home or a family or any kind of prosperity in Canada, especially in Vancouver, which is where I had set up everything and I'd kind of established some sort of roots. And then 4 years of just saving up money to figure out how to get the hell out of the country, shipping all our stuff via boat.
Yeah, it's crazy.
A boat that went from Canada to Korea to China to then Mexico.
Well, it's crazy when we're living in Canada and they started flooding Canada with immigrants. There was a point that Canada had the best immigration system in the world. Everybody was well integrated.
And I kind of caught the tailwind of that.
Yeah, but what was happening at the end, I was working with a ton of migrants because I had 4 different jobs and all that was working there was immigrants. And you could see these people's dreams just get absolutely crushed within 2 months. Yeah. They were sold a fake dream. They were literally working 3 or 4 jobs just to survive. They realized they had become slaves in a country that wasn't what they were sold. A lot of these people actually owned a lot of property back in India. They were showing me their houses on their phone and like, I'm going back to India as soon as I can make enough money to get a flight back.
Mm-hmm. And also, they're sold the lie, and we do see it now here a lot. For example, on X, there's a lot of ads saying, go make X amount of money in Canada. And they have a really good, well-oiled propaganda machine. But once people get there, they realize, oh, maybe they sold off everything they owned, or they used up all their savings to get to Canada. And Canada is unaffordable, and the wages are insanely low while the taxes are insanely high. So compared to their country, they can't have the same type of life, of a better life they had in their home countries. But because they're sold this lie of, oh, the Canadian dream and you're going to get all these things and it's a first world country and it's so diverse and it's so equal, then they leave everything behind and they end up destroying their lives, at least temporarily, while they're stuck in Canada.
Yeah, Canada has a ton of immigrants coming in, but a ton of immigrants leave extremely quickly. Canada is very hard to get to, so they don't get the poorest of the immigrants. What they do get is either middle class or rich immigrants that usually own homes back in their home country. And when they come to Canada, they realize, wow, I had it better back where I was because I already owned everything and I wasn't forced into this like credit system, forced into a system where I'll never own a home and I can barely support my family.
And working 24/7 as well.
We're going to go into...
Ethel says, they were lying to you, Guy, because 99% of those dudes are still in Canada.
No, there's a lot of them were leaving because I did security and I worked with a lot. I would say for probably every 10 immigrants, by the time I left, 4 of them were leaving in expedient fashion. So 4 were smart enough to land on the ground, realize quickly, and then realize I need to get out before they rack up credit card debt and then they can't leave the country in an expedient manner.
Took me 13 years to realize.
6 of them are still staying, so you're still getting flooded. Don't get me wrong, but we're going to go into geopolitics. We're going to do the U.S., Canada, and the EU. That's where the majority of the politicians are from, so that's where the majority of the stories are today.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. And of course, starting off with Trump, because who else? But this was beforehand. From Disclosed TV, quote, Trump says his Gaza Board of Peace might replace the UN, but I believe you got to let the UN continue because the potential is so great.
Do you want your Board of Peace to replace the UN?
Well, it might. I mean, the UN just hasn't been very helpful. I'm a big fan of the UN potential, but it has never lived up to its potential. The UN should have settled every one of the wars that I settled. I never went to them. I never even thought to go to them. They should be able to settle those wars. They don't. I believe you got to let the UN continue because the potential is so great.
And the UN has become extremely corrupt and bloated over the years. It can't get anything done. It has no real power. It really handicaps a lot of the people that are a part of it, and it can't get anything done. He wants to create a new type of UN. We'll see if it actually happens. It's a $1 billion entrance fee. He's inviting people from both sides of the aisle. So the European Union, as well as Russia, as well as China, they need to invite people from both sides for it to be effective. Supposedly there's 60 countries signed up. It's expected to be 150 by the end of the weekend. Now, I don't know if that's big talk or it's going to happen, but to have an alternative to the UN is going to be interesting. Because the UN has become extremely ideologically captured, meaning they've created specialty groups like the LGBTQ, and a lot of countries in the Middle East don't agree with that. And they're not going to adhere to those standards.
But also, while there's actual crises going on, a lot of countries, a lot of individuals have tried to reach out to the UN, and the UN's response has been less than ideal or less than helpful even. And the corruption that has been discovered, especially in the last few years, has been exponential. And the fact that they don't want to face it or really change much since the corruption has been exposed really tells you a lot.
Well, and then they ran the Green New scam where they set quotas for carbon capture, different kind of climate change agendas. They put that into legislation in countries like the U.S. and Canada. Luckily, America's turning away from that, but Canada's completely handicapped right now. They have more natural resources, more oil, more lumber, more water than any other country except for maybe Russia, and they're probably equal on that point. Yet the country is absolutely collapsing because they can't touch a lot of that stuff because they signed these treaties.
And they actually implement
the wealth is right under their feet and they can't even access it.
Yeah.
The UN,
like that's why it's so insane to think about.
The UN has been weaponized against Western countries to not have a firm energy sector, while countries like China just completely ignore it, say they'll uphold to it, and they get rich and they start surpassing the United States. The United States, for the first time, is now growing at a bigger rate than China. This is the first year it's happened in a long time.
Speaking of the climate, Secretary Lutnick, you were watching his speech last night, and while I was editing, and while I was kind of hearing it in the background, I was like, oh, this is one of the
This was the best speech at the.
He did repeat himself a lot. But.
At the World Economic Forum. It was in a panel, so if you watch the whole thing, you can fast forward to the parts that he spoke, because that was really the only important parts. An economic minister from Canada and the UK were there, as well as somebody from Bank of America. But man, he really set things straight. He spoke plainly for everybody to hear and for world leaders to understand the direction of the United States. And he didn't do it in a mean manner. He just laid out the facts.
Of thinking. It is completely different than the WEF. I viewed the WEF as not a flagpole in the middle, but in fact, they are the flag. Whichever way the wind blew, so it blew. You should have solar, you should have wind. Why are you going to do solar and wind? Why would Europe agree to be net zero in 2030 when they don't make a battery? They don't make a battery. So if they go 2030, they are deciding to be subservient to China, who makes the batteries. Why would you do that? Why would the United States of America, which has oil and natural gas, try to convert to all electricity? China does not have oil and natural gas. Electricity and electric cars make perfect sense to them. That is practical and logical. Of thinking.
And if you watch one full segment from the World Economic Forum on YouTube, I recommend watching Witkoff's panel he had there. It was by far the best one. And I didn't think he toned anything down.
Lutnick.
Oh, sorry, Lutnick.
Yeah, that one. He's Lutnick.
Okay.
Witkoff is another one. Right? Yeah. He's Lutnick.
Okay.
I do know that.
Go back to the...
I closed it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
But it says Secretary Lutnick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Moving on. We always have these because you're not good with names or
thought that was
times or
Witkoff.
dates or
Okay.
anything. No, he's Lutnick. I know his face. He looks like an evil villain. From Eric Doherty, quote, European leaders are in utter panic on Greenland in Davos, begging Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, this is a different one, to talk more. No, this is, who were you talking? Witkoff. No,
Witkoff.
this is Lutnick, and it's the same one. To talk more about Greenland, Lutnick fired back with America first. Truth nuke, it's getting tense. See, this is Lutnick.
Yeah, and Lutnick is a good friend from Trump's business days. He brought him in. He wasn't a politician, and he's negotiated a lot of these deals, and he has a different way of doing things and saying things, and he speaks plainly. And I really have appreciated him and RFK in this administration probably more than anybody else.
And you do know it's him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I bring you back to Greenland?
No. It's unnecessary. It's the Western Hemisphere is vital for the United States of America. Our national security people are on it, and they care about it. And I'm going to leave it to them to address with our allies, with our friends, and with everyone how they work it out. But the Western Hemisphere matters to the United States of America. And the United States of America, as I've just articulated, really, really matters to the world. When America shines, the world shines, because they all need to make sure America is strong and powerful to take care of them, God forbid. And so I think America and the Western Hemisphere are vital to America, and I'm going to leave that to my national security people to address.
Right. The rest of us, I think, are finding it harder to make that kind of separation clearly. And I would be curious to know how the representatives of the UK and Canada might want to think about these issues. Do you see them as starkly divided, as Secretary Lutnick would like us to have them? Does this logic of what's good for America is good for the world convince in this extraordinarily strong, extremely eloquent expression that we've just heard?
You go first.
Thanks, Francois. Lovely.
We're friends.
So I'm very struck by and taken by the idea of putting your own country first and considering your own security and resilience. I think it's about 3 years ago now that I gave a speech where I coined the term securonomics.
And a lot of them are so heavily invested in this globalist system and getting free money through the United States, through these NGOs and U.S.A. They don't know how to stand on their own 2 feet. They're going to have to do it now for the first time. All the people on the panel, when they were asked about it, said, yeah, we agree. And it sounds like they're just giving lip service while they, behind the scenes, are trying to transition to the new teat, which is China. It looks like China is trying to step up to be the head of the new global order, which is the countries that want to stick with that old global order that can't do things on their own. And Trump is trying to say anybody that wants to stand with the United States is going to have to be self-sufficient and strong on their own. So that when they stand with America, we can be even stronger together.
Also, Lutnick, maybe by the end you'll realize you'll figure out the names, put names to faces. From Rapid Response 47, quote, Howard Lutnick on the president reversing the damaging effects of globalization.
Think about what globalization is. Let's find the cheapest labor in the world and do it. And what that means is that the workers in Ohio who make cars, in Michigan who make cars, everybody, remember, once upon a time, Intel made semiconductors, and now they're all made in Taiwan. Why have we allowed our industrial base in America and really in Europe and in the UK to be just completely hollowed out beneath us? It didn't work for the workers. It didn't work for our economy. What it did is it exported our economy to the rest of the world. And so how did the U.S. grow? Kind of about the same as the rest of the world, right? We were in the 2s, they were in the high 1s. Now what's happened? Think about it. We're at the 1-year anniversary of Donald Trump. In the third quarter, we grew 4.3%. And I'm telling you, in the first quarter we're in right now, I think we're going to grow over 5%. The $30 trillion U.S. economy is now going to be growing at 5% or more because we are taking care of ourselves. We finally have an industrial policy that is sensible for America, right? It's going to grow manufacturing in America. I was in Syracuse. We announced the opening of a $100 billion mega fab building high bandwidth memory, right, in upstate New York. When was the last time upstate New York had any investment, let alone one that's going to bring in 25,000 jobs? The Micron's investment in America of $200 billion is going to bring in 90,000 jobs to America, and we have over $750 billion of that coming to America. This is how you reindustrialize America. This is how you do it under Donald Trump.
Yeah, and if you watch just the mainstream media, and I know a lot of people that just watch the mainstream media, and when you talk to them, there's a complete disconnect. They don't understand economically, by all the metrics, how well the United States is doing. They're outgrowing China right now. Their growth rate is 4.3%. It looks like it's going to go up to 6% probably in 2025. It's all these trillions of dollars that are coming in, supposedly 18 trillion. It's not just talk anymore. A lot of liberals keep saying, oh, yeah, it's nice if that money actually comes in. No, the ground's actually being broken already at a lot of these different manufacturing plants in Texas, in New York. The investment came in, and what they did, they made special tax policy so you can write a lot of the taxes off if they build the manufacturing plants very quickly. They can cash in on 10 years of tax credits in the first year. So all of these people are trying to break ground as quickly as possible. They're moving at light speed right now when it comes to building these manufacturing. And the way they were able to do it was by Trump deregulating a lot of the tax industry and a lot of other things.
And for me, it is interesting to see the conniptions that everybody's having, be it about Greenland or about America saying, well, we want to make America great. You should want to make your countries great too, because that is not the way it's supposed to work. And that's not like the U.S. is the hegemon power, and they're not supposed to have more power because power is bad, even though they benefit the most of having or trying to get power themselves as well. But they don't want to improve their countries, and they don't want to have it thrown in their faces that the U.S. is actually trying to do something first for its citizens, because they haven't been doing it for the longest time, and to have that spelled out and said fully and directly at them is, I think, what's making putting their panties in a bunch.
They're also not willing to pull off the Band-Aid of globalism. They want cheap food coming from South America or wherever they're going to get it from. They want cheap autos coming from China. They want all these cheap things, and if they manufacture it themselves, they're not going to be able to manufacture it cheaply, and they say they can't compete with the Chinese autos. That's why you put a tariff on certain industries, so you protect your workers within that country, and then you already have a market within your own country. It may not be the biggest market, but it's big enough to actually create a manufacturing base for certain strategic industries that are absolutely crucial to national security, such as food, such as water, such as steel,
energy.
Such as energy. You're going to need these things, even if you don't have raw minerals within your country, which some countries don't. You can bring those raw minerals in and then refine them within your own country. It's absolutely necessary that you can refine raw materials so then you can make finished goods. Well, what are you talking about?
BlackRock. From Wide Awake Media, quote, Davos, WEF co-chair and BlackRock CEO Larry Fink openly acknowledges that global elites have lost public trust and now face an uncomfortable reality in an age of populism and deep institutional mistrust. They are also very scared of that word populism, because doing what the people might want and not the elites is terrifying to them. Hold on.
At last year and the year before that, they said, we're going to tell the people and force the people to adopt our system. Otherwise, there's going to be pain. Now you're seeing, well,
now you're seeing the pain.
It's not exactly working out how they thought it was going to.
We believe that outside the United Nations, this is the largest gathering of global leadership of the post-COVID period of time. For many people, this meeting feels out of step with the moment. We hear all about the elites. And how does that play out in an age of populism? How does an established institution make a difference in an era of deep institutional mistrust?
For good reason.
Well, and I have something to say about this, because it's not going to just be by taking action anymore. People, you've lost so much credibility. You're going to have to do more than take action. And I'm going to suggest something after this clip.
And there's some truth to the critique. I believed in this forum for a long time. I certainly wouldn't be leading this if I didn't believe that we can change and make the world better. But it's also obvious that the world now places far less trust in us to help shape what comes next.
Good.
If the World Economic Forum is going to be useful going forward, it has to regain that trust.
Yeah, and it's not just the World Economic Forum. It's a lot of countries in the EU are having this sentiment. How do we regain trust to the public? We need to do a few things to regain their trust. We need to consolidate media. We need to have one voice so we can have unity. No, that's not what you need to do. What you need to do and what the people want these institutions to do is implement radical transparency that can be easily accessed by the general public and possibly even rewarded when corruption is kind of rooted out. So when people look through the numbers and they can whistle blow on these organizations, there should be some kind of reward system. We need to get rid of corruption, and the only way to do it is through radical transparency, and that needs to be easily assessed by the general public. Right now, a lot of these government institutions say, oh yeah, we put the numbers out there, but it's extremely hard to find. They need to promote where these things are, and they need to promote people to dig into these things through some kind of reward system if corruption is found to be there.
And especially with the ability now to be, if they wanted to, transparent with online, with data sharing, and yes, some of those are important state secrets or whatever, but places like the WEF and places like the UN, they're the ones that would benefit the most and regain, if they want to, I don't think they can, the people's trust by exactly showing their work, show your work.
We don't trust politicians anymore.
Or elites.
We don't trust elites.
And they're scared about it.
We don't trust elites and politicians. Even if I vote a conservative in, how do I know only based upon his words? Behind closed doors, he may be cutting dirty deals and I don't really know what's going on. I want a system of radical transparency where and a lot of these politicians are going to lose a lot of their freedoms if they want to run for office and we actually implement radical transparency. And that has to be the cost. That has to be the cost. Politicians have to lose freedoms. They have to behold to probably a digital ID, a lot of other digital things that they're trying to put on the population. The population shouldn't be subject to these things, but the politicians should be, and they should be compensated reasonably, meaning politicians make a good salary, but if they want that salary, they're going to have to adhere to certain rules that the public now needs in order to regain trust through them.
Mm-hmm. In them. Continuing on, from Wide Awake Media, quote, speaking at Davos, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent defends Donald Trump's tariff strategy, arguing that Europe and Canada underfunded defense for decades, choosing to prioritize social welfare instead, while the U.S. absorbed the
And all these other countries already have tariffs. They want to criticize America on it. Canada has massive tariffs. The EU has massive tariffs. These are protectionist tariffs so they can build their own industries.
Which they don't.
Well, they don't build their own industries. They have these protectionist tariffs, and rather than use it to build their own industries, they line politicians' pockets all day, and the country gets weaker and weaker and weaker.
So what are the plans for tariffs on Europe then?
Well, we're in the midst of completing a very good trade deal for both sides. So the plan is to go ahead with the trade deal. Of course, the president has said that he, on February 1st, will implement a 10% tariff if the Danes do not want to give up Greenland. And it is on the 8 countries that sent troops to Greenland.
So what do you want to say about the NATO alliance then? I mean, Denmark has been a long ally, the European Union united against any move. How do you progress with what looks like a strategic move for the United States, but also preserve the alliance, the NATO alliance?
Well, look, I think that the NATO alliance is very safe, sound, and thanks to President Trump, it's never been more secure. When President Trump came in his first term, the European countries and Canada were not meeting their spending quotas as a percent of GDP. Now they are. They got a lot of catch up to do. And Maria, to put it in perspective, the United States of America since 1980 has contributed $22 trillion more dollars, or spent $22 trillion more dollars on defense than all of NATO. So roughly the same size population, and we have spent $22 trillion more. That is 2/3 of our outstanding government debt. Mm-hmm. Europeans have been spending the money on social welfare, on roads, on education, and it's time for them to pay more, which they've agreed to do.
Okay, and it's not only that they've outspent the Europeans by $22 trillion. This talking point is coming up a lot that the Europeans are saying, no, we contribute. No, you were outspent by $22 trillion. And a lot of that money that you did spend, you tried to trick the United States by building bridges, building roads, and saying that was military spending. When it's not, it was infrastructure spending. Well, that $22 trillion the United States spent was hard military spending.
But also those countries are going on an almost like really hard socialist model where welfare and taxing are the most important things, which actually allow governments to continue to control populations more than a more capitalistic model or a model based on tariffs and capitalism does. So they don't want to move away from the model because they know that the population, they've made the population almost fully reliant on them and dependent on them, which is the place where they want to keep them. So they don't have the money because they're spending it all on being able to control everybody else.
Donald Trump is trying to make these countries self-sufficient, and he wants an alliance of countries that are self-sufficient, so they're stronger together. The countries that are more right-leaning or more conservative are very likely to want to stand with Donald Trump. The EU and NATO are going to try to stop that. After Mark Carney gave his speech at the World Economic Forum, you've seen a lot of these Western leaders realize they don't want to be self-sufficient. They just want a new master, and they want that master to be China, to give them free shit so they don't have to build their own military, so they don't have to manufacture for themselves, so they don't have to have their own energy resources.
Back to Besant from Gunther. Eagleman, I always say Engelman, but it's Eagleman. Secretary Scott Bessent just put the world on notice at Davos.
Good. Well, as I've often said, the Trump economic plan is a three-legged stool. It is trade, tax, and deregulation. Trade, we have signed historic trade deals, and we are bringing in the hundreds of millions of dollars of tariff revenue. But more importantly than that, on the other side, and I think what goes unnoticed, and it should be highlighted, is as we do these trade deals, not only is the U.S. taking in revenue, we have pushed down the tariffs mostly to zero with other countries, and we've taken down non-tariff trade barriers. That's why you saw a dramatic jump in exports in the U.S. in the third quarter. On tax, we got the one big, beautiful bill done on July 4th, which no one said could be done. And in that, we have full expensing, permanent, which gives business great certainty for equipment. We have full expensing for factories and ag structures, so we are seeing a CapEx boom. The CapEx is up 12%. In the history of economic cycles, CapEx booms always lead to employment booms. And then thirdly, and the silent part that is really taking hold now is the president's deregulatory agenda. For too long, we have over-regulated. We are in Europe, the center of the great regulatory morass. The Draghi reports came out and said that Europe needs to deregulate. President Trump has taken the initiative and deregulated, whether it's what the Treasury does in financial markets. We are safely and soundly
and you can leave it there.
Deregulating the bank.
A lot of what Trump needed to get done is create this boom that's currently starting to happen. And in 2026, I think you're going to really see that. And he's banking on that for the midterms. When it came to a lot of the stuff in the big, beautiful bill, I didn't necessarily like that. He had to make a lot of compromises, but he needed to get a lot of things deregulated. He had to change the tax system so companies would have big benefits if they hurried on breaking ground for these manufacturing facilities. He wants them built. He wants them built quick. When it comes to taxes, I think his longer term plan is actually to replace taxes with tariffs, meaning he wants to get rid of taxes for regular citizens. This is a model that's not really done in most of the world. And a lot of the Western world's freaking out because when they talk about taxes, especially when somebody like Mark Carney talks about taxes, he wants to tax businesses even more and he wants to tax citizens. So when you start taxing foreign businesses through tariffs, it creates a new model that really freaks the rest of the West out because there might be a revolt in their own country if Trump says there's no more taxes for American citizens. And then citizens from other countries start saying, well, why are we being taxed? And he's also trying to take off property taxes on all housing. So they're currently trying to implement that in Florida. On the next vote that goes through, it's going to be on the ballot. If the citizens approve it, it's going to be one of the first states. And Trump wants to bring that to the national level. He has to win the midterms in order to get votes. He can't do some of these things through executive order.
And here's still Scott Bessent with why the U.S. is now not it's the inverse.
Follow into that. So you do not believe that the EU or the UK have any retaliatory financial instruments or measures in their bag that the United States should be worried about? To follow up to that, so
And if you didn't hear his answer, they asked, you don't believe the EU has any retaliatory measures? And he said, no.
But he
And,
also laughed. He was like, no.
and Trump said he wasn't going to use military force for Greenland. It's because he doesn't have to. He's going to give him two options. You sell us Greenland so we can provide military security, or we're going to pull out of the UN, which you're going to lose all military security. And I think the EU kind of knows that. They wanted to frame it as, oh, the U.S. is going to attack us. The U.S. is going to attack us to try to unite a coalition against Trump. But the truth is, he's just going to put a simple decision on the table. You've outsourced your military to the U.S. since the 1980s. Now, you either want us here or you don't want us here. If you don't want us here, then we'll pull out of NATO. If you do want us here, then you give us Greenland. I think it's that simple.
But speaking of housing that you were just touching upon, also Besant said that big institutional investors are done buying up single-family homes under Trump.
And yeah, this is absolutely huge. And Canada needs to pay attention to this because a condo in Canada that costs $800,000, there was a study done on this, it should cost $90,000. There's so much foreign investment from companies and from citizens from other countries that artificially inflate the market.
The ban on institutional investors in single-family homes, for those of you who are not American, in the U.S., pre-Great Financial Crisis, institutional investors did not participate in the single-family market. So post the financial crisis, institutional investors hoovered up single-family homes. They continue to do it, and there's an unfair tax arbitrage there. You and I have a mortgage. We can deduct the mortgage amount. Institutional investors can deduct the borrowing amount, but they can also expense any repairs and depreciation. So we think that it is a good idea to have them out of the market. We are going to give guidance at some point to see what is a mom and pop, that someone, maybe your parents for their retirement, bought 5, 10, 12 homes. So we don't want to push the mom and pops out. We just want to push everyone else out.
Okay, you can leave it there. And there's a lot of countries that do have systems like this and realize that this is the problem. I was watching something on buying property in Thailand, and in Thailand, you have to be a citizen of that country. They do allow foreign investors to buy condos in extremely big high rises, but only 49% of each high rise can be owned by a foreign investor. So it's extremely, extremely strict. And a lot of other countries realize if you allow foreign investment in, whether it's through foreign citizens or foreign businesses, people aren't going to be able to afford homes in those countries, especially in poorer countries. They already know that this could be a big problem, and they've already solved for this. So if the United States could do something similar, it would be great. Now, this next clip, it was actually one of the best. And although I don't like him, he had a way with his words here, and it was Gavin Newsom. Don't like the guy, but this was a fantastic clip.
Possible, probable Democrat candidate for 2028.
You feel a message for Europeans who are concerned about the messages from the White House around Greenland this week?
Yeah, it's time to buck up. It's time to get serious and stop being complicit. It's time to stand tall and firm, have a backbone. I've seen this in the United States. The supine Congress playing both sides, say one thing on a text or tweet, another publicly.
Should you respond with
principles? It's time to stand tall and strong.
Does that mean responding with
tariffs? Time to stand united. You make that determination. I don't make that determination.
But when you say standing tall, what do you mean?
Just I can't take this complicity. People rolling over. I should have brought up a bunch of knee pads for all the world leaders. I mean, handing out crowns and this is pathetic. Nobel Prizes that are being given away. I mean, it's just pathetic. And I hope people understand how pathetic they look on the world stage. I mean, at least from an American perspective, it's embarrassing.
So what should Europe be doing?
You should decide, the Europeans should decide for themselves what to do. But one thing they can't do is what they've been doing. And they've been playing. This guy's playing folks for fools. And it's embarrassing.
Europeans think this is diplomacy and this will ultimately
this is
work.
Diplomacy with Donald Trump? He's a T-Rex. You mate with him or he devours you. One or the other. And Europeans don't need to stand. No, Europeans could be if they continue down this path and process. They need to stand tall, stand
Okay,
firm,
that's
stand
good. Now, I
united.
didn't agree with what he said there, but the fact that he said I should have brought knee pads for all these politicians, I found hilarious.
Yeah.
And the fact that he said you mate with the T-Rex or you get eaten. I mean, he's going to be something to be reckoned with in the 2028 election. He's a fantastic liar. He knows how to talk in long formats, whether it's 2 or 3 hours. He's been practicing on his podcast. Yeah. He's been bringing conservatives on there to kind of challenge him. So he knows how to push back. He knows the holes he's going to have to kind of sure up. So when he goes in the 2028 election, if they point it out, he's going to say, well, no, I had policies against that. So he's the only real challenger for 2028. And I absolutely hate him because I used to live in California and I've watched him closely. That being said, he's getting even slicker with his words. If he can add things like this, like I should have brought knee pads for all the politicians. You either mate with the T-Rex or die. It's a little bit of Trumpism he's bringing over to the Democratic side, I think.
But I also think with Trump and Lutnick and Bessent saying what they're saying, but then at the same time, Gavin Newsom kind of telling off the European leaders. The European leaders are the ones that are coming out looking worse because I think they thought, like with Carney, they'd have an ally on someone like that, with someone like Gavin Newsom, and he would say, no, we got to go fight with them for, like, we're not going to fight with them for Greenland. They have their sovereignty, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that he came out and said, they should solve their own problems too, which is essentially what Trump is saying, what Bessent is saying, what Lutnick has been saying, is also interesting to note, and they should actually listen. Maybe if they won't listen to Trump or Bessent or Lutnick, listen to Newsom.
Well, also,
he's one of your guys.
I hope Newsom doesn't win in 2028, but he is definitely going to be a challenger. And I will say this: I've been watching a lot of liberal politics when it comes to Davos and the restructuring of the world. And a lot of them are saying is Trump's made it acceptable to bring in pure power politics, and if Newsom gets in there, he's not going to go back to this pure globalist world order. He's going to start playing power politics and have certain countries be subservient. And he's going to favor other countries. It's just going to be a different group of countries. But the United States policy under Trump is really restructuring the United States within the deep state, even within the Democratic side. They're seeing power politics as something they can take advantage of.
Mm-hmm. But now I will read comments. Because we're done with the U.S. section.
Oh, Canada's next.
Yes, Canada's next. Joe Montana says, I don't know these people, but if I give you their names, can you try to reach out to them and get them on your show? I'd love to. I am not this week, but next week, probably I'm going to start trying to, again, reach out to people. So that would actually be really helpful. Thank you. Again, you can DM it on Instagram or X at Nat and The Guy for both of those. They're not here, but they're on our usual down there. And or email at natandtheguy@gmail.com, just how it's spelled. So thank you so much for the help too. And Neo says, no, I'm sorry. Hello, Nat. Thank you for being here. Says, good evening. My lovely wife and I are sick with a cold.
Oh, horrible.
Well, it's cold everywhere, but hopefully you get better. Lots of vitamin C and D3. I'm not giving medical advice, but it does really help when you have a cold. But hopefully you feel better. And I guess you made each other cold.
Well, hopefully you're making chicken soup this time.
Yeah, that could be something to do. And it also warms out the environment. I don't know where you're at, but Washington.
Yeah,
so it
Washington.
should be cold there. It should actually be getting cold there.
Yeah,
it's
but
freezing here in Mexico.
The East Coast and Texas are getting really cold.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hold on. Non also says, wow, pretty interesting stuff. Also says, I don't understand the economics part of what Trump is doing. All I know is a rising tide lifts all ships. And then,
and I think they're starting to have that messaging, which is important. And these countries have been like barnacles on the United States, slowly dragging it down. And the U.S. isn't strong anymore. And China was on a trajectory like this. The U.S. was on a trajectory like this, and they were about even kill. What's happened under Trump is he's not only made them equal, but the trajectory of each country is now changing. We'll see over the next 3 years if that changes. He's now outperforming China, which I didn't think was going to be able to happen, especially within 1 year.
Non also says, also, I'm certain I'd have no idea about this if I wasn't watching your show. So thank you so much as well. Thank you for the kind words.
And this is the restructuring, what's happening at Davos. It's a global restructuring, whether Europe tries to stand on their own 2 feet, which I don't think they can. I really think they may align with China, just like Mark Carney. But what's happening on Davos, and this is why I dedicated the whole show, I didn't know if we would have a lot of viewers, but as far as geopolitics go, this is as good as it gets. All the big players on stage in one place, talking about different topics. And this year at Davos is a lot different than usual. There is pushback on the stage on a lot of these meetings.
Yeah. Non also says, I never had TDS. I can acknowledge when stuff he does is good. And also says, I'm not sure, but what they're talking about is a component of socialism. It's almost full-on socialism, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the way, and like globalized socialism.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting kind of what happens because the Democrats or the left has been looking at the Chinese model and thinking that's the model and that's the way they want to go. And they've been trying to slowly implement that, but it's really hard to implement that model in the West. And it just comes off as complete authoritarianism. Although I like Trump a lot, he does talk about I don't like the fact that he's bringing digital ID, and he talks about a public-private partnership in a different way that the left talks about, but he's still talking about it. And I realize if he doesn't do some of these things, America's not going to be able to compete with China. But I'm very wary of it, especially because if he makes it acceptable for these public-private partnerships, meaning the government to have influence over private industry, if the Democrats get back in, they're going to completely abuse that. And if the Republicans win another term, they're going to be comfortable enough to push that even further. So I don't want to see freedoms be stripped. And yeah, and
it's also an experiment what he's doing with tariffs. So it could work. It could not work too.
I would also say I'm maybe a one-issue voter. There's a lot of issues that are important to me, but we're so close to World War III because of Europe. If the left gets in, they're gonna support Europe in that war against Russia because they want that $74 trillion. And even if the right gets in under Rubio, they're gonna do the same thing. Rubio is a neocon. He's gonna support that war and he's gonna want the spoils of that war. JD Vance is the only candidate right now that I'm fairly confident wouldn't go to war. He's been the one against escalating the Ukraine-Russia war. He's been the one saying we need to get a peace deal done. He's got my vote now because of that reason. I'm aware there's a lot of negatives to him. That being said, there's no other candidate right now that I don't think would go to war.
And I think Non puts it pretty well here. Says, anyway, we have a hybrid socialist, capitalist, corporate welfare economy. Exactly.
But it's even worse in Europe. That's the thing. Yeah. In Europe, it's the same thing. Full on.
And Canada is also almost full on.
Yeah.
And Non also says, oh my God, Newsom is so terrible. I think he's a lizard person. Lol. He's definitely going to be the DNC's chosen and ordained candidate. Newsom looks and sounds like Max Headroom. Yes, exactly. Thank you. That actually is a good comparison.
I absolutely hate him and despise him, but I've been watching him because I used to live in California. So I've been watching him before he was governor. And I used to just like, how would anybody ever vote for him? But he's sharpened his tools over the years, especially with this podcast. He's getting better. And people that don't know him and that don't know his history, I think he's going to be a real challenger in 2028. And that's a scary, scary thing because of all the heavy lifting Trump has done. If the Democrats get in there, they're going to be able to take advantage of all those things.
For the bad.
For the bad, yeah.
And hold on, let me read the RU and BLE ones. Oh God, there's a lot. Thank you. Where are we? About Lutnick, Ethel says, imagine Guy meeting Lutnick, punching him in the face and screaming, you filthy Witkoff. that I'm sure that would happen a lot to him because he's really bad with names, like really bad. Yeah. I'm really good with names.
I used to work with people for like, I worked at security at different bars and I would work with people for like a year and a half and not know their name.
Yeah, I mean.
And I just say.
He still doesn't know our anniversary, so. I don't take it personally.
Oh, we have an anniversary?
Or whenever, like, he always asks me, when's Valentine's Day? Has it passed already? You asked me that the
other day. I think I
missed
it this year.
No, it's in February.
Oh, it's not. Good, I haven't missed it yet.
February
Good,
14th.
I haven't missed it yet.
Ethel also says, Lutnick. Why are there so many Nicks all around? Nick Sortor, Nick Shirley, Nick Fuentes, Nick Adams, Nick Freitas, and now Lutnick. What's the conspiracy involving all of these Nicks? Well, maybe they all work under me, the Nat.
Nick Nat.
But yeah, there's a lot of Nicks. Speaking of Nick Shirley, actually, we didn't bring it on to this
yeah.
show. But
Because it's all
they've been fighting back and forth. You know more about the fight between him and Channel 5.
Yeah, maybe I'll talk about it real quick.
Yeah.
I talked about the interview Channel 5 did, which is like a younger, hip, liberal news channel on YouTube. I rather like them, even though they're on the left. They're one of the better channels. So if you do want information from the left, I would recommend going to that source to know what's kind of going on in that ideology or that sphere. But they interviewed Nick Shirley. I thought it was a fair interview. Nick Shirley came out with some clips saying it was a 2-hour interview and they edited it down to an hour. And he showed 2 short clips about how they edited the bad parts out to make Channel 5 look good. And I said, well, this doesn't look good. Channel 5 now responded and they said, Nick Shirley didn't know how to talk. We were trying to make him look better. And they showed a lot of the stuff they took out, which was fair. I mean, Nick Shirley doesn't do good in interviews, and especially with the clips they show. And I thought the final product they put out was fairly reasonable and fair. And I thought they were trying to reach across the aisle. That being said, they didn't release the entire interview. So I thought their response should have been.
But now neither of them has, because Nick Shirley apparently had a camera there on the side being able to film it, and he also has the whole 2 hours, and they have the whole 2 hours, and neither party is releasing them.
Yeah, so no, Channel 5 saying in the future they're going to release the full interview on their Patreon. Well, why don't they?
The important one is this one.
Start with this one, and then going forward, that's easy to do. Obviously, both sides were trying to play each other and look like they were trying to reach across the aisle more than they actually were. I was actually, after I first seen that interview, man, I was actually thinking, oh, this is great. The left and right are kind of coming together, and it's through the independent media sphere, which is important, but it seems like it's falling apart already.
Yeah. And Ethel also says about New Scum, wait until Trump demolishes New Scum's stronghold. California is just too big and not that easy to take down as Minneapolis, but I see it coming. Minnesota, but I see it coming.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to address the Newsom issue. I think they want to do it after the midterms and probably a year and a half out from the actual election. I think they're going to run a hit campaign on California and on Newsom. They're going to need to, because the way, especially after watching the Ben Shapiro interview with Gavin Newsom, it was like he ran circles around Ben Shapiro.
In your opinion.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not a big Ben Shapiro fan, but I do think Newsom is good when he knows the talking points. But if someone is able to destroy him and get to him on the things he's actually lying about, he would fall apart.
Okay.
I do think he'd fall apart.
He didn't fall apart, and Ben Shapiro's known as a debate bro. He should have been able to run circles around him.
But he's also rusty.
He didn't. Oh, he's rusty. Come on now.
He's less relevant now. He's getting less numbers. He's
been taking more.
He's
been taking more money from certain countries, so he's not having to do real work, and he's getting lazy now.
Sure. Let's move on to Canada, which is going to be taking a lot more money from one country in particular. So, China, what does the Prime Minister of China have to say?
Okay, and this was Mark Carney after Davos and after the World Economic Forum is obviously the leader of the globalist sect. All the European leaders are kind of rallying around him. All the mainstream media and all the independent left-wing media is really rallying around him and pumping him up as this is the way to go. Their leaders need to act more like him. The problem with him is, although I would say, yeah, he looks tough in the public eye when he makes his statements, he's absolutely destroying Canada with his policies. Yes. They literally have 30% of the country ready to separate. The actual policies he's trying to implement, his own side doesn't even like. It's falling apart under his feet.
Doug Ford got really mad at him because he wants to bring in Chinese cars, a bunch of Chinese cars. Well, there is still a little bit of manufacturing of cars in Ontario.
I honestly think if they call a snap election in the first half of 2026 and he loses, they'll make him
leader supreme.
They'll make him leader somewhere in the EU or within the UN, because he's now looked at as the major person that can push back against Trump.
And the thing is, they like him so much because he's the one that wrote the playbook. He was in the background, in the shadows, doing everything that they're now implementing. So of course.
Okay, let's play this first clip though.
So Tamara Uglini says, quote, Mark Carney just called for the end of the rules-based order, not reform or evolution, but a rupture.
Friends, it is time for companies and countries to take their signs down. For decades, For decades, countries like Canada prospered under what we call the rules-based international order. We joined its institutions, we praised its principles, we benefited from its predictability. And because of that, we could pursue values-based foreign policies under its protection. We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false, that the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient, that trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim. This fiction was useful, and American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes. So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals, and we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination.
And he's been using tariffs as a weapon for a long, long time. Canada has against the U.S., but the U.S. hasn't done it in reverse. Now that they want to do the same thing Canada has already done, they're saying it's being weaponized. They've been using that weapon for a long time. But ultimately, this speech was confession through projection, something Robert Barnes likes to say a lot. He kept talking about the sign in the window. At the beginning of that speech, we didn't have that part, but he was telling the story about communism and how it's a fraud. Everybody puts the sign in the window, even though they don't believe it, but they fear the consequences. They fear the censorship. He's trying to say Donald Trump and America has this communist ideology when it's exactly the opposite. He's the one, along with the European Union, currently bringing in censorship, arresting thousands of citizens. Citizens are scared to say what they mean. They put the sign in the window and they say what the government wants them to say so they can keep their jobs because they're scared. He tried to say America was the one doing that. That is confession through projection, and that's what Mark Carney was doing there.
And also, I mean, his country is falling apart, completely apart. Again, cost of living crisis, housing crisis, all the crises that he doesn't want to manage, but he wants to go talk tough at the WEF because that's actually where he belongs, because he's always been in that.
Well, and he also framed it as, how did communism last for so long when there was so many people pushing against it? And it's like, the left is the one that likes communism. I watch leftist commentators all day. They want to run towards communism. He's building a communist structure through socialism in Canada. The next step after socialism is communism. The fact that he's talking bad about it.
It's because he wants to project that that's not what we're doing. I hate it. We never did that. We're not doing that. Yet we're partnering with the biggest communist dictatorship in the world.
Yeah, that's the truth of the matter.
Like, anybody who actually buys this either doesn't know anything about Canada, anything about geopolitics, or just wants to listen to what they want to listen to.
Well, it's important to pay attention, especially in this Canadian section. I know a lot of people usually tune out during Canada, but this is all Davos clips. A lot of them of Mark Carney. He is now projected to be the new globalist leader to try to cut off Donald Trump and realign the Western governments with China.
From Juno News, which are great as well. Quote, independent Canadian journalists, quote, at the World Economic Forum, Mark Carney was accused of being the epitome of a globalist and asked whether globalism was over.
Yeah, so he was called out at one point, and this was an interesting clip.
President Trump and a lot of people who agree with him condemn globalism a lot. And I suspect, you would be the kind of epitome of a globalist. You work for Goldman Sachs.
So he said, you're the epitome of a globalist. A lot of people would call you a globalist. It's interesting how he responds. But the other day, he was talking about the New World Order when he was talking to Xi. He said, we're aligned for the New World Order. We showed that clip. So he's really sensitive now because there was so much pushback in the independent media. Let's see his response.
I believe you were a central banker. You're comfortable and lived in several countries. Is globalism, first of all, is it a thing, and is it over?
I think, well, look, understanding how the world works, having an appreciation for other cultures, understanding the connections, and being able to, or at least appreciating ways that how we connect, whether it's through technology, trade, investment, culture, can enrich our lives, and that's a good thing, and also help solve problems. Being detached from where you live and the broader needs of society, there is an epithet for that. I don't know that the G word is the one. There's certainly what we're finding, to go back to the points I was making, is that there are a number of like-minded countries that want to work through partnership to achieve those goals for their citizens and for the world more broadly. The call is for more to recognize what's really going on right now and to pool their resources to the benefit of citizens. So it won't be global, it won't cover the globe, but it will be more powerful.
Okay, Prime Minister, thank you very much.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And he wrote a book on globalism. His ethics revolve and his political policies completely revolve around globalism. And he wouldn't even say the word anymore. He said the G word, and he whispered it. The G. We don't need to call it the G word. I remember when conservatives used to self-censor and say different. What's an instance? You had an incident with your friend one time.
Yeah, for some reason we were talking outside in a park in Canada, in Vancouver. We were talking about something about her work, and she said something. She was saying something about white men, but instead of saying just, "Oh yeah," and the white guy or white men were standing over there, she said, "And white men." And I said, "Why are you whispering?" She was like, "I don't know." And she hadn't realized she was doing it. And I told her, "You're self-censoring." And she said, "Yeah, I guess I am."
Well, yeah, for the first time, we're seeing liberals self-censor when it comes to talking about globalism. You've seen the interviewer there who was extremely left-leaning as well, saying, is globalism actually a thing? Like, everybody knows it's a freaking thing at this point.
And it's not just about the diversity and, liking other countries. They're playing dumb.
You were just talking about the New World Order with Xi 3 days ago.
Let's see his predecessor and what he's been up to and who he's been in, apparently. From Rebel News, quote, Justin Trudeau and Katy Perry go for a walk at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, and bump into Ezra Levant, who is the owner, or at least the main guy at Rebel News, independent Canadian journalists, without his usual bodyguards to block questions.
What do you make of the Federal Court of Appeal upholding the ruling that your martial law was illegal? They said you violated... It's good to see you, Ezra. What do you make of the Federal Court?
Katie has no idea what's going on.
Oh God, I was going to say something about that.
Because Ezra Levant, I mean, like him or hate him, and yes, he's controlled by Israel, blah, blah, blah. But he was and Rebel News were one of the only outlets in Canada that were also censored by Trudeau's government, but that were pushing back against, helping during the Freedom Convoy, speaking at the Freedom Convoy, recording and reporting on the Freedom Convoy, but also about the Emergencies Act that Trudeau implemented and put in, and also about how the legalities of it all went down, while no other Canadian media outlet was covering it.
Well, it was just found to be illegal what Trudeau did when he took away constitutional freedoms from Canadians by implementing the Emergencies Act. And now he's trying to act like, that doesn't matter. It's because there's no threat of prosecution. Although he broke the law, he's above the law because he was the prime minister. And under Canadian law, they can't prosecute him, which is absolutely ridiculous. As I did grab that clip, there was a bunch of fake news out there about Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau splitting up. So if you see that on your X or social media feeds, that's actually fake. They're still together. I originally grabbed that story.
But I'm like the correct, I'm the fact checker of the team. But moving on to another one, but great for Rebel News for being at Davos. Rebel News says, quote, Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister, Anita Anand, is asked in Davos if the Canadian military is considering scenarios to defend the country in the event of an American attack.
Sir, is the Canadian government, is the Canadian military looking at scenarios to defend Canada in the event of an American attack?
The work that we are doing in terms of foreign affairs is to grow the Canadian Armed Forces, to invest significantly in the Canadian Armed Forces, and to always ensure that the defense and protection of our country is first and foremost on top of our list of priorities. In terms of CAF planning, those are questions for the Chief of Defense Staff, and I refer you to them.
They're
Yeah.
hiring, I mean, we talked about this. They're hiring mostly women and mostly people that have never served and are not being trained.
Well, they're very sensitive. They want the right ideologically aligned people in the military, and that's very hard to get. The militaries around the world are filled with conservatives primarily, and that's the basic ideology of people that go into the military. They're generally conservatives. Mark Carney's plan is to make sure they have diversity quotas within the military and that it's civil servants that are going to be soldiers part-time. And that's the only way he's going to be able to meet his quotas because he wants liberals, not conservatives, to kind of run the military. That's a tall task.
In the case of an American attack.
Well, it's not so far-fetched. He's really aligning with China right now, and he says they're going to have intelligence sharing. He could possibly even bring in Chinese social media companies over American social media companies. If he starts doing all these things and he keeps playing tough with Trump and a lot of the other things, they're not going to take it well. And it's not that America's going to invade, but the separatist movements that are happening in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Quebec, if they actually vote to separate, Trump's immediately going to recognize that and said, you have to honor that. You have to honor that vote because it's in your constitution. And if you don't, we are going to support Alberta in their separatist movement. So...
Let's watch another disgrace of Canada. From Tamara Ugolini, quote, not Tamara Ugolini, but Melanie Joly just admitted the Liberal government's strategy.
Well, and this is the former, I believe she was in charge of the finance ministry in Canada. She's completely incompetent. And I have a feeling she slept her way to the top, but that's just conjecture.
Well, she also has a pretty interesting.
But when you see her talk about things, she doesn't even know what she's talking about. I run a freaking podcast and I know more about politics than this woman. And she just tries to put words within industries together. Oh, we're working on AI and this and that to try to make it sound like they're doing something. Everybody knows all the business she's currently talking about, whether it's automotive or AI, is completely leaving Canada or can't get a foothold within Canada.
Well, I think, as a government, for us, we look at everything, all the levers. I've talked to you about diversification. I've talked to you about real industrial policy on, we're coming up with things on auto, on the defense and industrial strategy. We're looking at a new AI strategy, etc. But fundamentally, when we, develop all these policies, we have to govern a nation and we have to bring people along. And we have that responsibility in a very turbulent and chaotic world right now with a lot of anxiety, with a lot of frustration, where people think things are costing too much. And so, and they're fearful and are not necessarily trusting people, necessarily at this forum. There's a real issue of people being preoccupied, whether they're becoming powerless. So my point is it's giving this idea to people that we are in control, that we're dealing with things that in this chaos we have a plan, that we have all the levers that will have an impact on their lives, and fundamentally all the policies.
We need to be in control. We have the levers. We can cancel your bank account. We have complete censorship within Canada. We'll ban you from social media.
So we need people to think.
It's the amount of legislation they're bringing in to strip Canadians of their freedoms because they want total control is well put here. And it's the fact that the government lays it so bare. Now, I understand she's not trying to put it in that conjecture, but that's the way people are going to take it when you're actually trying to pass legislation to do the opposite of what you're saying.
That I've talked to you about will create jobs, will be helping them to have access to better services, and ultimately also to a promise of themselves and their children to have access to a better life. It comes back to basics, but I think that's what we need to show concretely back home.
Yeah, people are losing full-time jobs in Canada at amazing rates. So what's happening is they're working DoorDash and they're working as a taxi driver. They're working 3 jobs. So the Canadian government is saying, we've created more jobs than the previous government or than America is, but nobody has jobs that pay well. They're having to work 2 or 3 part-time jobs. These aren't real jobs. These aren't full-time jobs that you can support a family on.
I was going to say something, but
and I think that's the last
Canada one. Yes.
Canada section. If we have any comments,
I'll read comments and then we'll move on to
Latin America, then the EU. There's only one article in Latin America.
Post.
You get so angry when I call it an article.
Because an article is a written thing, not an ex post.
Okay, come on.
From Joe Montana asks you, I guess.
Okay, but the podcast is going well.
It's a show. He always says podcast. He always says station instead of channel, like he's 80. What else do you say? A bunch of things.
Hold on.
Where are you going? What are you doing? Oh, yes, my book.
I love to show this on the show anytime I get a chance because this is her rule book for etiquette, and she's constantly.
It's Emily Post. If anybody doesn't know who Emily Post is, I recommend you do.
Ridiculous.
It's not ridiculous. It's manners.
I'm constantly getting.
That's how you build a proper working society. Via values and manners.
This is crazy.
It's
I don't listen to her. I don't listen to her most of the time. So one in one ear, out the other. But
you shouldn't.
I always wondered where she got that streak of authoritarianism, and it was from her etiquette book.
Manners, building a proper civil society. Joe Montana asks you, I guess, is Canada as bad as California?
Oh, I would say Canada's worse because at least in California, there are certain constitutional rights, and you have a federal system you can kind of go towards. The entire system from the bottom to the top in Canada has been completely captured. All these policies are backed up by legislation. The court system is completely ideologically captured. The education system. California is bad, don't get me wrong, but Canada is bad.
Worse, I would say.
It's going to be hard.
I haven't been to California in a long time.
It's going to be hard to change the country. It's going to be hard to change California as well because they don't have voter ID. Yeah. But.
And then from RUMBLE, we have a lot from Ethel.
Okay, I'll leave it there. And just some of the things I've seen in Canada are just crazy. If you don't use proper pronouns, it's considered child abuse, and they'll strip your child from you, even if you're a good parent. Mm-hmm. We went to a court case of a gentleman that had his child taken from him because he didn't believe in
transitioning them.
Yeah.
Ethel says about China, would you recommend that all Canadians learn Mandarin at this point? Do you think this will get them at least a couple extra social points? I think most of them know Mandarin by now because that's where they're coming from. That's where most of them are from.
Yeah, I don't. Trump, at one point, I would have said yes. But with Trump pushing back, if we can get another wave behind him of maybe J.D. Vance or somebody that's going to really secure these policies that Trump has put in through executive order, but actually put them in through legislation and really see 8 or 12 years of these policies really hopefully revitalizing the United States. I think China may go down because of their population collapse, where the United States is really transitioning their economy, even though they're also suffering from a population dip. Their manufacturing is going to go into robotics and other things like that. So.
Ethel also says, I don't understand why Carney is so much for the globalism of the EU, but does not want globalism that the 51st state would bring to North America. Carney should be leading the initiative.
Yeah, and I also think if Trump is successful and whoever follows him up is successful, this idea of a golden age in the Western hemisphere could possibly happen, especially if there's a real focus on getting rid of organized crime. So maybe Spanish and English would be the thing. And maybe it's time for me to learn Spanish.
Been time for a while. Ethel says, are you North American globalists, guys? Should the U.S. globally expand to Canada and Greenland? And is there good and bad globalism? I thought we were making the G word great again.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with Canada is it's such a threat on the northern border if they start bringing in China and they bring in Chinese intelligence agencies into Canada, which they've already started to do with police stations in Canada. That being said, I mean, what I ultimately want to happen is for the United States to win and to help other countries within the Western Hemisphere win without taking control of those countries.
With a new way of doing things that would be X country first, so Mexico first, Canada first.
Yeah, and with the European Union,
they don't want that.
With the European Union moving away from America, America's going to need somewhere, because it is bringing back the manufacturing, and these manufacturing facilities are being built now. Those products are going to have to be sold somewhere, and there's going to be some manufacturing they're not going to want to do that other countries will have the benefit. So Mexico would be a big beneficiary of that, number one. But number two, they're going to need somewhere to sell those products. So if they can help out the economies of these other countries and they can be economies that would buy American products, it would be good for everybody in the Western Hemisphere.
But North American globalist, no, but North American sphere of influence and North American polar part, yeah.
Well, what we see, I don't believe in North American globalism, but what we did see was the pink wave, and the pink wave was socialism through Central and South America. I want to see kind of conservatism or populist conservatism with the strand of libertarianism we've seen in the United States. It's really taken hold in a lot of Latin American countries. And if they have that, that means we can build strong, independent countries and work and cooperate together. And that's what Trump has been saying with the EU. And he's trying to reach out to the EU to do that. But I really think Central and South America is ready for that.
And needs it as well. Ethel says, Ezra Levant was one of the few who watched in real time how Trudeau was punched in the face during the boxing match. Remember the priceless moment? They have a special relationship.
Yeah. Ezra Levant and Rebel News do get some funding from overseas, which I don't like, and I don't like their connections to certain countries, but they still do a fantastic job within Canada. And I do know some of the reporters don't want to report on certain issues because Ezra's running that company and he has loyalty to a certain country.
Yeah.
Which is a shame.
Yeah.
But they do good work outside of that one subject.
And Ethel also says, what is your advice to Canadians if U.S. troops set foot in Canada? Flight or fight? Should Canadians instantly surrender or welcome the soldiers with maple pies? What would you do? I think there's a third option. It's fight, flight, or join. Join them. Join the U.S. troops and just go against them. Rebel.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
America, I don't think
But it's not going to invade.
I don't think America wants all of Canada because that would require them to give them voting rights. And if they give Canada voting rights as a whole, America will go extremely left, and I wouldn't see any way back. That being said, if you take off certain parts of Canada, which are already trying to separate, those parts are Alberta, highly conservative, Saskatchewan, highly conservative. You're getting all the best parts of Canada without having to actually invade it. Plus, they don't necessarily need Alberta and Saskatchewan to join them. Just having them separate from Canada defangs Canada a lot. And it's a shame that Canada has gone so ideologically in one direction that they have to be defanged at this point.
Yeah. There we are.
Okay, are we going to go into the EU now?
We were in the EU.
Oh, we were.
Yes. But I had to change something. That's why I went to you first. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay, there we are. We're moving on to closer to home now, which is Latin America.
Oh, Latin America. I forgot about it. There's one story
You're
there.
in it. And yeah, I had to change the story just to get a more prescient, recent one. But it does, and I have quite a bit to say, but maybe I'll save it for the Spanish show.
No, say it.
From Marinov, well, quote, Mexico sends 37 more cartel members to the U.S., 92 total transferred under Trump pressure. Mexico's security minister announced another 37 high-impact criminals flown to the U.S. on 7 military aircraft. That brings the total to 92 cartel members transferred this administration. They landed in Washington, Houston, New York, Pennsylvania, San Antonio, and San Diego. The DOJ agreed not to seek the ending penalty. Trump said he'd make Mexico cooperate. They're cooperating.
And what I said was Sheinbaum was saying she's not cooperating with the U.S. She's sending troops to the border to fight against them. The U.S. was sending helicopters and military aircraft to the border and building permanent military bases there. I said they're cooperating with each other. Outwardly, they're saying they're not. We're seeing the planes that landed at the planes that landed at the Mexican airport. Sheinbaum said that was a mistake. She's not cooperating. Next thing you know, there's 37 high-impact cartel members being flown out of the country. There are operations going on right now, and Sheinbaum will continue to deny this until 2028. If J.D. Vance or conservatives wins in 2028, she'll outwardly come out and say she's supporting the U.S. and she's going against cartels so her party can be reelected in 2030. If a Democrat gets in, she's going to try to reclaim her sovereignty.
And that's kind of exactly it and what I wanted to say. Over the weekend, a big plane landed, a big U.S. military plane landed, or U.S. Air Force, I'm not even sure. But it was this giant plane that landed in Toluca, which is an airport that is close to Mexico City, but it's not a military airport. It's not where military planes are supposed to land. So there was a big hubbub all over social media, like, oh, they're coming, what is that? Where they saw maybe missiles being unloaded. I didn't know, but apparently Hercules-style planes, it was a Hercules C-130, are just for military equipment. And yet the Mexican government had no real excuse as to why the plane was here, what it was doing. They said, oh yeah, they were authorized to land by our like security secretary, but no, they're not. They're transporting people. They're just sending people, military troops, to go train in the U.S. Then that lie got uncovered. And now a few days later, the Mexican government comes out and says, oh yes, we've captured 37 high-impact cartel members, while the U.S. is already here and doing operations. So again, what I think is going on in the background, there's a way more cooperation than people think there is between the Mexican government and the U.S. government. And the U.S. is probably just trapping them, handing them over to Mexico and saying, you present them, you say you caught them, and then just we'll bring them back to the US. But it's essentially the Mexican forces are not at the level of capturing this many people at the same time. And the US has already said, they have all the names, all the locations, all the numbers of the people that they want to go after here in Mexico. It was just Mexico that was kind of impeding it. So now that we're seeing this increased cooperation and these increased numbers of how many bad people they're sending over to the US, it's clear that the US is fully here and doing operations. Yeah. Even as much as Claudia Sheinbaum wants to deny it.
All right, if there are any comments, we'll read the comments and then we'll go into the EU.
No, there's not. I think it was too short of a section for people to write comments.
Okay, and this is a big section because Davos and the World Economic Forum is actually taking place in the European Union. Plus, the European Union has more politicians than any other region that are part of the World Economic Forum. So there was a lot of speeches from EU leaders, and some of them were absolutely hilarious.
Oh, wait, we do have one comment from Ethel, but from the past section. Ethel says, the U.S. does not have to give China their voting rights. Look at Samoa. They have no say in politics, but they're still a territory. So the Canadian Samoa, they can call it.
Yeah, and I really want to see if there is this emergence of the Western Hemisphere. Although they're not going to be world powers, a lot of the Central and South American countries, they need to build self-sufficiency and independence. That means food security, grow your own food within the country. Water security, make sure you have security for water and that it's readily available for your citizens. And housing. Those three things should be made absolutely dirt cheap. So much so that if people work hard, they can kind of get the basic means that they need. And if they choose not to work, they don't need to.
Let's move on to the EU, where they can't work and they won't work either. So yes, Davos is happening in the EU right now, have the most politicians there because they're closer, but also have the more embarrassment to face over there. From Farouk says, quote, Nadio Calvino, president of the European Investment Bank, says, I think the EU has
I think we can just play the clip here.
Yeah, I'm not going to read it all. I just wanted to give a background.
And this is just copium from the European Union. And there were so many European Union leaders that want to frame things, but everybody can see through it at this point. You outsourced your energy needs, you outsourced your manufacturing, you've outsourced your military, and you're not capable of standing on your own 2 feet anymore.
They cut off their own feet.
I think the European Union is a superpower. And I think we have to believe in ourselves and our capability. And I'm very happy to see 3 leaders that are really very self-assured, because that's what I think we need to speak clearly. We are a superpower when it comes to research, to health tech, to new technologies, to research centers, to universities. We are in quantum computing. We are in key technologies. We are not a defense superpower because the European Union is a project for peace. So it makes sense that we need some time to ramp it up. From the European Investment Bank perspective, we're all in to support Europe to be stronger in the world, but also to contribute to a peaceful world, a multilateral framework that actually can continue to provide us with win-win partnerships based on respect, shared prosperity, stability, because I think that that's, at the end of the day, what our children and grandchildren expect from us that are at the helm of important institutions at this historic moment for us.
And
the European Union is a cuck, basically.
It's your politicians and your corruption that hold the people of the European Union back. They need radical transparency. They need to get their sovereignty back. I think the EU even needs to kind of break apart so each individual country can grow strong within its own borders again, and then they can talk about if they want to come back together. I mean, a place like Mexico has corruption because of cartels and politicians, and it's divided between the two. The EU politicians, I mean, the amount of corruption within the EU and the levels and layers of government bureaucracy is crazy. You have the EU, you have NATO, you have the individual countries, you have NGOs placed all around, the amount of regulations. They are handcuffing themselves. And they keep handcuffing themselves more and more and more by making more layers of bureaucracy.
Speaking of, I mean, they're not technically the EU, but still, they're counted as them. From Basil the Great, quote, Judge rules Reform UK can challenge government's attempt to cancel local elections. A bad day for dictator Starmer.
This is fantastic. And as much as Reform UK has been making the wrong moves lately, we've kind of been showing it on the show. They're changing fundamental policies and beliefs to try to expand their voter base. I understand that they have a need to want to invite more voters in, but they're compromising a lot of their fundamental principles. That
And the
means
thing that attracted a lot of people to support.
yeah, they're still the best choice you have in the EU. I mean, you have the other parties are just an absolute joke. Reform UK is the best you have. I guess you go with them at this point. But what Keir Starmer trying to cancel these elections, this has been an ongoing thing.
Something else that's worrying in the UK, and from Starmer, from Whale Insider, quote, the UK approves a plan to build a new mega Chinese embassy in London featuring 208 underground rooms despite security fears.
Yeah, this is a 100% real story. I had to go verify it. This is the kind of thing when I see it, I'm like, this can't be real. This is probably fake news. Multiple articles. This is all over the place. This is 100% real. This is basically like building an underground military base and calling it an embassy in the center of London. This is freaking crazy. I mean, Canada's signed the deal with the CCP now, saying they're going to cooperate with Chinese intelligence. And now the city of London is going to build an embassy with an underground base in there. This is insane.
I mean, the UK has already given at least part of the power grids to China anyways to manage.
Well, on the surface, they're telling Trump, yeah, we're going to become strong. In the background, they're holding a new person's pocket here. But,
let's move on to your favorite woman. From Marinov, quote, von der Leyen says this global economic shock should be used to build a new Europe.
Yeah, and if Western Europe does find a new master within China, so they don't have to stand on their own 2 feet, I really think it's up to Eastern Europe to say, no, we don't want to be part of their European Union no more. We're going to stand with the American alliance.
1971 was the year of the so-called Nixon shock and the decision to delink the US dollar from gold. In an instant, the foundations of the Bretton Woods system and the entire global economic order set up after the war effectively collapsed. But it also had two major effects. It inadvertently created the conditions for what would become a truly global order, and it provided a sharp lesson for Europe and on the need to strengthen its economic and political power. It was a warning to reduce our dependencies, in this case, on a foreign currency. The world may be very different today, without any question, but I believe the lesson is very much the same. That geopolitical shocks can and must serve as an opportunity for Europe. And in my view, the seismic change we are going through today is an opportunity, in fact, a necessity, to build a new form of Europe.
Yeah, and the European Union, as well as the UK, it was their banking system, how they controlled everything. And that banking system, people are kind of breaking free of it now, especially the US. A lot of people don't know what has been going on behind the scenes with the United States, but the controls, especially that the UK had on the American banking system, are now over. And the European Union, as well as the City of London, are absolutely freaking out because they're not able to manufacture their own goods or have their own supply of energy because it was supplied by Russia, or they don't have their own military. All they have left is their banking system, and that's now collapsing as other banking systems break free. Whether that's the U.S. banking system now completely breaking free of that the old way of doing things, or it's the BRICS, which is China and Russia also breaking free.
And them only having, for example, only paper silver or paper gold, not having the reserves needed to actually use it as they need to.
Yeah, they have nothing to back their currency with. So it's going to be a tough time.
But apparently there's a mother of all your deals coming with the country least expected, apparently. From Watcher Guru, quote, the European Union is preparing to announce a historic trade deal with India.
The next weekend, I will travel to India. There's still work to do, but we are on the cusp of a historic trade agreement. Indeed, some call it the mother of all deals. The next weekend.
She's trying to promote it like her name was Trump, but she was all over the World Economic Forum. This isn't the only clip. They're talking about the trade deal with India, the trade deal with India. The European Union is going to be flooded with Indians, and this is going to have massive long-term detriment to the European Union. Even more so.
Detriment than they've already seen through their own stupid policy.
And the fact that she's saying we're going to have a massive trade deal with India, and she's touting like people that live in Europe know they already have a problem with immigration, and this is only going to worsen it.
But let's see, the guy who also has a husband, apparently, according to Candace, from Baron Trump, quote, French President Emmanuel Macron is openly begging China to invest more in Europe. China is welcome. What we need is more China direct investment in Europe.
Okay, and he was wearing sunglasses because he looked like he got punched in the eye by his husband/wife. He was on stage multiple times, always wearing glasses. Him, just like Mark Carney, they want to align with China, and they're saying it outright. The rest of the European Union is saying one thing to Trump's face, but if you look what's happening on a day-to-day basis, it looks like they're trying to reorient towards China now.
And I don't know what's worse, of him wearing sunglasses or him just showing his red eye. He probably popped a vein out of stress.
China is welcome, but what we need is more Chinese foreign direct investment in Europe, in some key sectors, to contribute to our growth, to transfer some technologies, and not just to export towards Europe some devices or products which sometimes don't have the same standards or are much more subsidized as the one being produced in Europe.
And the reason he was really wearing the glasses is within the EU, there's a huge conspiracy theory that's been going on for well over 20 years now. There's a figure like Alex Jones that's the UK version of him, and he got famous for talking about elite reptilians, and they have these weird red eyes. And this got into the psyche of the European Union a lot, especially the elites, because within conspiracy circles within Europe, it's huge. So anytime a European leader has a red eye, they're very sensitive to the fact it's not a good look to a lot of citizens within the country.
But he just looks ridiculous, in my opinion. From Mary Nalfall, quote, Macron to maybe Trump. Maybe this was directed to Trump.
And it's not a time for new imperialism or new colonialism. This is a time of cooperation in order to fix these three global challenges for our fellow citizens. And it's not.
And France was one of the countries surprisingly talking about they wanted to possibly pull out of the European Union because they want full control of their military when it comes to Ukraine. So
What military? Yeah, well, the French military has always been very useful during global conflicts.
Although they're all the militaries in the European Union are fairly weak, France does have one of the stronger militaries. Germany doesn't because of the treaties they signed after World War II. So.
But moving on to more France.
I'll say one more thing about France.
Okay.
They have been sending a lot of troops secretly, like French Foreign Legion members, into Ukraine. And there were a lot of reports coming out over the last couple of years that thousands, tens of thousands of these French soldiers, whether they were actual French soldiers or French Foreign Legion members, dying within Ukraine, and they couldn't outwardly report on it because they were secretly there. So France actually wants to get more involved so they can outwardly talk about the people that lost their lives. They'll probably make it look like if we can actively get into the war, we can admit that a lot of French people have died there already.
Now let's move on to another thing that's scary. From White Awake Media, quote, in Davos, French central banker François Villeroy de Haggalhou frames the privatization of money as a threat to national sovereignty, especially if issued by U.S. firms.
Yeah, and this was very interesting. So we'll take a look at the clip, but what he's saying is very true. European leaders are freaked out right now about private markets and private currencies that are backed by gold and silver, taking control of the market and really making there no need for a central bank anymore.
As I am a central banker, let me insist a bit on at least I gave a speech 2 weeks ago with a triangle of threats and a triangle of answer, but let me sum up. The first threat is privatization of money and loss of sovereignty for many jurisdictions. And we know this is a real fear, especially in emerging countries. But if we have only a currency in the future which is private, and let us be honest, which is issued by American issuers, private companies, then we will have a question on sovereignty. Here the answer is CBDC. As I am a central banker, let me...
And this was the thing. The entire globalist plan revolved around CBDC. They had passed all the legislation in Canada, the EU, and there was no counter to it. So this was programmable digital currency, meaning they could tell you what you could and couldn't spend your money on, and you had to spend your money in a certain amount of time. And they were pretty open with this because there was no counter. Trump has come in and created an entire other system based upon stable coins that actually is a digital currency, which I don't like, but offers a lot of freedom and completely undercuts the entire CBDC, whether it's in the EU, the UK, or any other country. These countries are freaking out because they're central banks. There's going to be no use for them if these countries adopt another country's currency.
But moving on to Ukraine and Russia, because you always like to talk about it, from Katerina Lisunova, quote, Zelensky received an invitation from Trump to be a member of a board of peace, but he said he doesn't see himself on any board together with Russia and Lukashenko because in reality, they are on a board of war.
Yeah, and this is crazy. The United States has always had a long history of talking to people they were in conflicts with, whether it's China, Russia, even during the Cold War, there's a dialogue. The fact that Zelensky is not even willing to dialogue, this is the Joe Biden strategy. This is only going to get you into World War III even faster, and I think that's what he wants.
This is in Russian?
You can okay, you can leave it. That being said, Zelensky, it was rumored he wasn't going to show up in Davos, and then Trump showed up this morning, gave his speech. I watched the entire thing. He said he was supposed to meet with Zelensky shortly after that, but there was rumors Zelensky wasn't there. So I don't know if they've met yet or not. I haven't seen any reports on it. So it's likely Trump was maybe misinformed and Zelensky isn't actually there.
But Putin as well.
And one other reason Zelensky might not want to go there, he was touting the fact that he was going to go to Davos and get a $800 billion deal from the U.S. who was going to finance them over the next 5 years. A lot of people thought that was a direct lie. If he shows up in Davos and doesn't get a deal like that, it shows that it actually was a lie all along.
But now from Russia, from MJ Truth Ultra, quote Vladimir Putin on how Europe's leaders will behave with Trump. It's in Russian. Do you want me to play it or read it?
Yeah, just read what it says here.
So, quote, you'll see it will happen quickly soon. They will all stand at the feet of the master and will gently wag their tails. Everything will fall into place. Europe has no realistic response to President Trump wanting to annex Greenland. It is too important for the future of the United States, and we have a president who understands that.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting what kind of happens after Trump leaves office, because Vladimir Putin seems really confident here. But if a Democrat comes in and escalates that war or restarts that war, if Trump does find an end to the Russia-Ukraine war, I can see it starting back up very easily. And then Trump having Greenland in the hands of globalists or Democrats in the States is a strategic vulnerability for Russia. So right now, it's a good thing for him, but in the long term, I don't know.
And from Marina Full here, Russian Foreign Minister says U.S. clash with Europe isn't going anywhere. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov just said the U.S. beef with Europe and the rest of the world isn't getting patched anytime soon. He also said the idea that there's one boss, aka the U.S., running the world is over. Lavrov stated the world is multipolar now, meaning a bunch of powerful countries pulling in different directions, and it's not going back to how it was.
Yeah, and this is kind of going back to my theory of ARC. America, Russia, China, they're the three major world superpowers. They're the ones that really have complete sovereignty and can control their destiny. They're obviously competitors, but behind the scenes, they're working to get together to some degree, not in full cooperation to benefit one another, but to make sure things stay inside the rails.
Is it in English or?
No, you can leave this one. I just wanted you to read the headline because Davos is going on. Russia usually doesn't go there, but it's important to know what their opinions are.
And another one from Russia.
And this is the last one for this section.
Ian Miles Chong, for some reason. Quote, for Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov states that the United States has been the only Western country to offer real, tangible solutions to ending the war in Ukraine, and that Russia welcomes them.
Okay, and you can actually play this clip. This one's in English.
Talking about other tracks of our interaction with the U.S., it also includes Ukraine, naturally, and we value that under Trump, the U.S. became the only country that not only expressed the understanding and taking into account the interests of the Russian side, but also came up with the solutions. They took into account the root causes of the current crisis. We welcome such an approach. And we believe that it is completely justified in Alaska, in Anchorage on the 15th of August last year. And President Putin has repeatedly stated it publicly. We welcome the proposals that were submitted by Washington prior to the meeting in Alaska. And we do hope up until now that this understanding is still in place. Talking about
and they basically have come to an agreement between the United States and Russia on what they want to happen in Ukraine. The problem is the EU does not want this to happen, and the EU has control over Zelensky through a lot of, I think, corrupt dealings that have gone on in the background, and they have the receipts if Zelensky steps out of line. So, okay, why don't we go over to RU and BLE and just do a few stories over there? Why don't we go over to RU?
Okay, but let me just read the last few for this section. Hold on. Where are we? Ethel says there's historically been a large group of people who already moved to Europe from India. These people are widely known as, people don't like this word, but gypsies. The assimilation did not go well. And also says, imagine how hard Macron's life is, being groomed from the age of 14, domesticated and regularly hit by a vile and ugly pseudo woman, never able to date his secret lover Trudeau. Heartbreaking.
Yeah, and I think it's having another wave of immigration right now when the European Union is so vulnerable, it could be the tipping point to a civil war. I know we had a question the other day about, do I think civil war is on the horizon for the United States? I really don't think so, but I think the European Union and maybe even the UK, it is getting very close in those countries.
Yeah. And Ethel also says or asks or says about Ukraine, Guy, I noticed you hesitated between the Ukraine and Ukraine. This makes Ukrainians furious. I've heard there's a whole big language editing campaign because of a similar grammar nuance in Russian.
Oh, I have no idea. Am I supposed to say Ukraine? Or the Ukraine? I don't know. I don't even know what I really said.
Most of the time, I have no idea what I'm saying. Ethel says also, do you think Russia will eventually become a part of China? The world will then mimic American politics with the bipolar bi-party system.
No, I think Russia's cooperating with China because they need to, if they want to continue to exist at this point. That Russia-China alliance benefits both countries, but they don't trust each other, but they'll definitely cooperate in order until the United States power wanes, and then they can become independent again. I think really the EU and Russia are natural partners because of Europe's once manufacturing base and China's energy and minerals. The EU has lost a lot of its manufacturing because it no longer gets cheap Russian oil. So all the manufacturing has actually left the United States, or most of it. But they could rebuild it if they were getting cheap Russian oil again and the natural resources being the raw minerals from Russia. It's a natural alliance. I know the EU has a lot of Russia derangement syndrome because of what happened under Russia and communism, but they really need to get over that, and it would benefit both countries immensely, much like the Russia-China alliance is benefiting both countries immensely. A long time, Russia did not want to be part of China or in an alliance with China. They wanted to be in an alliance with the EU. They even proposed to be part of NATO at one point, and they were rejected. They're having to find their own identity now because they were rejected so many times from the European Union. Russia had considered themselves to be European for so long, they no longer see themselves as European. Okay.
Do you want to go over to RUMBLE?
Yeah, let's do the last few stories on RUMBLE.
Okay. So if you haven't subscribed here on YouTube, please do so. It really helps us out. We are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and thank you so much to everybody that has already subscribed, and we'll...
And if you haven't watched our videos, they're getting massively censored. They're not being pushed out. They only got a few views. We'll continue to report on subjects that YouTube doesn't like, but it does help if we can get a few more views.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to Joe Montana and Neo for your comments here on YouTube. And we'll see you over on RUMBLE in a few seconds.